We were on mute, so I'm going to restart the meeting. So I'd like to call to order the Board of Finance in the City of Burlington on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024 at 5:33 p.m. for our budget information session of fiscal year 25. First item on the agenda is the agenda. Is there a motion on the agenda? Moved by Councilor Carpenter, seconded by Councilor Barlow. All in favor? Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, all in, so motion, oh, hi, Ben.
Hello.
Hello, motion carried unanimously. On to our second item, public forum. We go first to folks in the room and then online. So we have one person in person, and we spend about 2 minutes per person. Should we share time in our first member of the public?
By the way, will this be on YouTube also to watch later?
Yes.
Anyway, and I know it's not a dialogue, so Nancy, but maybe later in the meeting. Just curious how the funding for the zoning connectors and forward 125 and maybe beyond. I think my estimation is probably enough money that was appropriated in city capital budgets to finish the work started now. That'll be done, but where do we stand going forward from that? I understand we're still designing and planning, but at least as far as I can tell, there's little or no money for the local share. Once this phase we're doing now is done. Maybe later on, the presentation I can watch it on. Just curious what's happening with that. And just one more question. I don't think BD is going to be here today, correct?
They already went.
They will be here.
They already went last week.
Just a question maybe was answered 7 months ago. They made a big to do about getting approval for what I call the steam deal to hospital theme park. The silence is in it indefinitely. They said it was shovel ready to go. We had to do it now. Blah blah blah. I asked the question of the their last commission meeting. And the answer was something like to do with the partners and they're trying to work stuff out. I don't know if you got an answer on that, but I'd be curious. That's a big capital project. It's gonna be, I assume. And I'm wondering if they're, I can't help it. I'm curious what their other answers, but the answer they gave at the commission meeting was most satisfactory. It didn't seem to jive at all with what they said back in November. The deal was. Thank you very much.
Else in the room wishing to address the board We'll go online to anyone online who'd like to address the board. Please raise your Zoom hand. And first up, I see Councilor Sharon Bishop. Sharon.
Hi, good evening. I keep coming in and out of this meeting. Someone made me a panelist and then I got booted out and now I'm back as just a person. I'm sorry, whatever. But anyways, I hope you can still hear me. I just have some comments to make regarding the budget presentations tonight. First of all, for permitting and inspection, the loss of the housing manager, Patty, is a big hit, but I want to say that Bill Ward's team is so cohesive that I'm very hopeful that they will do well while this gets resolved. But they've got very skilled people. They're a great team. So I just wanted to say that. Number two is City Attorney's Office. And when you look at that, when Moreau Weinberger took over, he felt that we were sending things out too much. So there were too many consultants. And so he tried to bring things back in. I understand why it's so heavy with consultants because we haven't really had any continuity and we have so many vacancies. But I'm hoping that there will be a discussion, not tonight, but I'd like to know what the thought is for getting the right balance, because I think there's some cost savings there if we get the right balance, but you need a staff that stays in order to do that. And I get that. Next thing is business, downtown business, whatever it's called, that has the Church Street Marketplace. And I know that we had a lot of vacancies, and now we have a lot of businesses moving or moving in, but it seems to be we're really heavy with restaurants, and with the cost of eating out, I'm a little worried about how that's going to play out. I just wanted to alert people to that. And the last comment has to do with parking. And so DPW has their hands full, but parking, I think, is a really challenging aspect. They've limited the number of parking spaces, and yet the expectation is revenue will be the same, which I don't understand why that is a given. I'm concerned that they're pricing people out. The parking garage, at least in the marketplace parking garage, is in terrible condition. And as a person that used to go downtown a lot, I don't feel safe in the parking structures. And so with the removal of surface parking lots, I'm really worried about that. I'm worried about how that will impact businesses also. And then there was a communication in the city council packet for Monday night from a person who was fairly frustrated, saying that not everyone has a smartphone and not everyone has a parking app, and it's making it more and more difficult for people to park downtown. And I want all of that to really be considered. Montreal is very advanced in their parking solutions, but they have parking on street and not necessarily always in structures. I think the safety component's real. And residential parking needs an overhaul. The elimination of stickers on cars means that nobody knows who can park where. That necessitates people coming to your street to verify if that person is legally parked or not. And if you're not at the immediate downtown, I think it's a waste of time and resources. So those are my comments tonight, and I'm going to listen and learn. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. Anyone else online like to address the Board of Finance and public comment? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, I will close public comment. And I'm going to look to Councillor Travers, see if he is willing to make a motion about putting something on the agenda. Councillor?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. And sorry, I'm not on camera yet. I will be here shortly. But I should have brought this up earlier, but my understanding is that the regional programs budget that we intend on hearing tonight, that it would be your office's interest and my shared interest as well, that we actually hear that presentation first. And I think now that we have an agenda, perhaps the most appropriate way to do this would be a motion to suspend our rules to hear that presentation first out of order on the agenda.
Or is it a motion to suspend our rules, or can we make a motion to reconsider the agenda?
Whatever your pleasure. I could make a motion to reconsider the agenda too. One way or another, I'm hoping that we can hear that matter first.
Well, let's just go ahead and do a motion to suspend our rules to take up that item first. So, Councilor Havenine has asked what the shift in time will be, so I can consider about 5 minutes. Okay. So, Councilor Travers, will you make the motion to move item 11? So to suspend our rules in order to move item 11 to the next action item.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second by Councilor Barlow. All in favor to suspend our rules to move item 11, which is the regional programs budget, to our next agenda item? Okay, by saying aye.
Aye.
Any discussion on it? I'm sorry. Any discussion on that item before we vote? Okay, now indicate by saying I approve the motion to suspend our rules to move item 11 to our next agenda item. Indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So our first item on our next item on our agenda will be item 11, which is the regional programs, followed by our next item of Mary Jacobson from the mayor's office will provide a brief review of this budget.
Hi everyone, Erin Jacobson, and as we did last week, I can talk slowly while we do that. Thank you. And I will, yeah, that would be great. Just to post it. Yeah, I'll be quick and thank you for accommodating. My son has a commencement for Honor Society tonight, so I just found out about it when he's 17, and that's when I find out about things. About an hour before. So really appreciate your making it possible for me to be there. While this is getting pulled up, I'll just say a little bit about the regional programs budget. It's different from all of the other budgets you'll see this evening. It's really about the budget itself reflects some small-ish city contributions to various profits around the city, and then in some cases the region, and in some cases the world, because you'll see that there's some small contributions to our sister cities in that budget. And this is a budget that we would like to take a deeper look at in the coming year in terms of who's listed here and how much money they're getting, and then maybe even thinking about some reporting back from organizations, but that's something for the upcoming fiscal year. For this budget year, what this budget represents, what we decided to do because of the gap we're trying to fill is, for the most part, we just went down the line, and if you would receive less than $2,000 from the city, we level funded. If you get between 2,000 and 40,000, we did reduce by 2%, and if you get more 40,000 or more, that was a reduction by 4%. And the only real exceptions to that, we did decide to level fund 3 organizations that are doing very direct work related to community safety, because that's a big priority for this administration, and we were hoping to have some additional funds this year to implement and support community safety provision in this city. So we did decide to just level fund. We would love to increase funding for these folks and for many folks, but we did level fund Howard Center Street Outreach, Rape Crisis Center, and Steps to End Domestic Violence. And another couple little exceptions to this budget that aren't about reductions is there are a couple items that we thought should be in other budgets, not in regional programs. So, for example, DCA had a line item for Highlight, the New Year's Eve program. We just asked that to be put in DCA's budget, not touching the amount. But that was the only other little kind of tweak we did to this budget for this year. I did get an email, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes to an hour ago, saying, could you please add to this budget the new sister city? The Ukrainian sister city that I understand was established established as sister city at the last city council meeting of the previous administration, and that's $2,000. And so that wasn't on our. We didn't know about that until about an hour ago, but we understand that. That Ukrainian city has been established as a sister city, and so that should probably go in the regional programs budget. That's a $2,000 contribution, just like all the other cities. That's the last little note about regional programs. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. In the end, we were able to find about $130,000 in savings. Not as much as we hope, but we also want to make sure that our community partners. Oh, thank you, Mayor. Right, so, the mayor's reminding me that we did, reduce entirely the Turning Point Center's funding out of the regional programs budget. Not, that's not the end of the sentence, because we can fund them with opioid subsidies. So that's just gonna have a different funding stream for the same amount. And there was another line item called regional programs arts. And that did move over to BCA's budget, and BCA felt that they could reduce that amount down from 62,000 down to 35,000. So they went ahead with that.
Just the other piece on that. There, is the $35,000 figure that it was reduced to is what prior fiscal years was the amount for arts grants. And so it is just returning of that, because one year we didn't expend arts grants to that full amount, which is why it turned into 61. And so that was a carryover between last fiscal year and this fiscal year. So we're going back to the original, in my mind, intention of $35,000 for arts grants. So it's not as big of a reduction as one might imply, but simply going back to the original.
Thank you. You're welcome. Have that conversation. Let's read in the programs. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Erin. Questions? I'm Councilor Carpenter and Councilor Marlowe. Your hands are up.
Two questions. One, I noticed you reduced the accessibility committee resource, and I'm just curious how you got to that.
I should have mentioned those too. Thank you. There's some commissions, committees, boards. I think there's 2 line items there that had fairly significant funding, and we worked with the CT office to figure out like what was the maximum amount those commissions and boards were needing from this budget to make sure that they were staffed. And then that's the number we used. Plus we added some to that figure to make sure that the police commission could have good staffing, because we have heard some concerns about the police and that commission really needing consistent staffing to be able to do. So that number is really based on what we think they will need, and the budgeted amount of last year that was much more than.
There was a separate amount though for accessibility committee in particular, and that might be what you're talking about. That was zeroed out in this budget because we moved that entire sum over to the HR budget, because HR is going to be staffing the accessibility committee. So that money isn't going to come out.
Okay. So that was when you originally proposed that was for staff and
Yes, and largely, as someone who sits on the accessibility committee, we use that for the interpreters that we need. And some of the other events, like when we opened the accessible playground at Oak Ledge, there was a few things we needed there, interpreters and microphones, that things like that.
my other question was about Heidelberg Senior Center, and I'm probably remiss, but there's a long history that goes with that allocation, why it's in the regional budget, which I you had updated, and I call that to your attention because at one time there was a proposal that actually be a city program. There was a big negotiation around it, where it was decided to make it be a regional program. But I just want to make sure that there's equity. I think the city in general is short on programs for older adults. It is a very active center, to be honest, in my opinion, more active than the one at the Old North End Center. And I don't want to see this center penalized because it's really, they do wonderful food programs. They've added a lot of food programs. And I'll put that, maybe I'll raise the question when it comes to the Parks and Rec budget, because I think it serves the city well to have this operate as an independent nonprofit. So you're not responsible for personnel or any of the other fun things that come with running a program. But in my opinion, it really is an obligation of the city as a older adult program. It needs to jive and it needs to be equitable in funding the other programs that Parks and Rec offer. So we might try to quantify that because I think it's important to compare them.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Carpenter. This is the exact kind of information that is helpful to know. When we were looking at the list of all of the different programs, in a short amount of time we had, we really were just trying to be equitable in making some little reductions so that then moving forward, we can have a little bit more information granted.
I can summarize that and send it to you.
That'd be really, including, I just have to jump into including a little more history on the difference between the two senior centers. Yeah, as it reading it again as a new mayor, it was very strange to see such a different amount of investment between the two. And so this is again,
There's a report kicking around from pre-COVID-ish time that talks a lot about that, and I'll see if I can
great, that'd be very helpful.
resurrect that.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Councilor Barlow?
Thank you. I'm just curious, there are some of these items that have been reduced by $50 or $100, and you may have answered this question. Was it just because within, like, looking at it, that was the minimum amount that they needed? I mean, why would they be, like, for $50 a software one is, so. American Red Cross. Regional programs, American Red Cross, reduced by $50, but I know you're trying to, I mean, all these things in aggregate, bigger dollars, so I appreciate the effort, but I'm just curious about the process.
I mean, the process was really in recognizing that it would be impossible with the amount of time we had to go line by line by line and figure out what was the smartest amount. And so then we just tried to, it was a little bit arbitrary, but come up with an equitable way to not reduce anyone in any significant amount, but just kind of spread those reductions throughout the budget the best we could. We had to draw the line somewhere, and we do a much more methodical job for next year.
The biggest piece for my observation is just to note that there's a standard criteria for how we are finance. It seems as if this has been an evolution in many different ways about why people are getting entities are getting certain amounts of money. So as we think into that, to make sure there's more transparency and the criteria for every nonprofit about how they receive these funds, how do other who are not even on the list, other nonprofits, how do we just have a fair process? And understand also where does the city, as we have this larger conversation in the upcoming year about right sizing our city government, this is a sizable budget, and can we sustain this kind of support for nonprofits? And if this is a priority, great, but let's have some clarity and transparency on the criteria and how people can fairly access funds to this.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Kane, I'm sorry, Councilor Travers online, and then Councilor Kane.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just briefly, I appreciate the presentation here. I did want to mention, I'm glad that you brought it up, Chief of Staff Jacobson, about the new sister city program in the Ukraine. I fully support our adding them in along with these other sister city programs. We also, at our last city council meeting in March, established a sister city program with the city of Fez East in Senegal. And I would recommend following up with former councillor Ali Jeng to see whether or not that new program to get it off the ground could use a similar sum. And, you know, I think the $2,000 goes a long way, relatively speaking. It's not a break the bank type number. But looking at some of the sister city programs on here, I do think it would be worth going back to take a look to understand what the current state of those programs are. I may be wrong about this, but I believe the previous administration, for example, may have at least temporarily ceased the sister city program with our sister city in Russia, given the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And when we have funding back for that program, which I could see value in that, but just want to make sure that there's intention behind that. And as we're talking about potentially moving funds to other programs, keeping that in mind. Thank you.
Councilor Kane.
Thanks. I was just going to say that given the interest the community has in the genocide in Palestine, that maybe additional funding be allocated to the sister cities there. I've heard the idea raised of like sending individuals there on a trip, to the apartheid West Bank, for instance, where our sister city is. And I know there are gonna be like community conversations facilitated by the Community Justice Center and maybe other partners, and I wonder if like the, you know, the burden on this particular sister city group, the Bethel Murad group, like might be substantially higher given the very significant interest the community has, and so I think the $2,000, you know, maybe would be appropriate to increase.
Are there any other questions for the chief of staff, the mayor's office? Seeing none, thank you. Yeah, it's about 14 minutes now, so we'll move right along. Okay, next on our agenda, we have the public works. Would you like to increase what's chicken before we get started here? And just a reminder, department heads, we're going to take about 10 to 15 minutes for your presentation, which I will do a little timer on it, so you have time for Q&A for about minutes. Sort of on track. Okay.
Excellent, thank you so much, Mayor Stanek. We have, I believe, 6 of us here. Rob Goulding, our Public Information Manager, is online. We Perry, Division Director. We have Division Director Megan Moyer and Colby Blair, one of our traffic maintenance workers, and our applicant president, Alan Mashtar here with traffic, and Matt Dow with wastewater. Did I miss anybody? I don't believe so. So we have 3 budgets, grouped budgets in front of you tonight. They're really 6 budgets. We're going to be efficient and get you through them. Public Works really is the foundation, maintaining the infrastructure that keeps Burlington vibrant, and we are pleased to do such meaningful work. I won't spend time to read our mission statement, but you can see the general different pots of money that we're going to be talking about this evening. Matter of fact, those 4 dashed areas are the order of the presentation. We have 4 divisions in our organization and a Pine Street customer service team overseen by Rob. The division directors are all listed at the bottom. What's most important about this slide, I believe, is really which programs are listed in blue and which are in black. The blue programs are the ones funded by the general fund. The black ones are either enterprise or special revenue. So this presentation here focuses on the programs in blue. We maintain a whole array of assets across the city to keep Burlington a healthy, sustainable community, and we are a 24/7 operation. In terms of high-level budget goals for this year, resiliency is a key message for us. That starts with our staff. We've had a number of departures this year and have struggled to fill a number of positions. So making sure that we can retain and develop our staff and maintain those services is a key goal for us. We also have a strong safety committee, and we have more injuries in our department than the industry average doing work that we do. So this needs to continue to be a focus for us. As you all know, we have a number of very large capital projects that we are in the midst of delivering right now. In addition, we know the community is very passionate about improving our walk-bike infrastructure, and that remains a focus for us. Further down the list, earning more billable revenue for the general fund. This has been a major focus to help our budget be as positive as possible and have our general fund team earn as much revenue as possible. And I will just finish up and say the communication and engagement to our diverse community always has to be a focus area. We are very grateful to have Rob's support in that effort. So in terms of the finances, we are seeing about a 3.5% increase of budgeted revenues over last year and a 4.5% increase on expenses once we take out the additional $500,000 of leases that are in DPW's budget. As you may know, DPW's budget and equipment maintenance houses the lease payments for all the city's general fund fleet. So once you hold that constant, it is a pretty nominal increase on the expense side, largely driven by labor. This helps break down the general fund programs. As you'll see here, equipment maintenance and street maintenance, which are programs that we carry overseas. It includes the plowing of our streets, potholes, and keeping the city's over 300 fleet vehicles in operation. The lion's share of the general fund budget. Our engineering group with 12% oversees the general fund capital projects for the city. Key drivers on the revenue side for us that enabled us to increase revenue this year includes parking services fine revenue, largely by charging customers the credit card processing fees, because most people are paying online or using credit cards when they come in. Another big area of revenue increase is the solid waste generation tax. That is a tax that's on the bill for your trash bill at home for residential customers. And we're proposing a 22% increase, which is really about $1 a month or $12 a year in order to more fully cover the overall cost of the recycling program. For years, we've been running the recycling program without covering the full cost of the program. Tech services will do more billable projects. The message here, though, is that it's going to be harder for us then to do unbillable projects, things like traffic calming and other programs that don't have a grant source associated with it. Because of the tightness in the general fund capital budget, have had to reduce a bit of our billable money for sidewalk construction. There still will be about 2 miles instead of the usual 3 miles constructed. But on the positive side, due to our good cross-divisional collaboration, Water Resources is helping with more billable work for street maintenance. On the expense side, in effort to help the general fund and to better create a group of staff members focused on our wastewater and stormwater collection systems, the plan is to transfer 3 of the general fund paid street maintenance workers over into Water Resources, and you can see that reflected in Division Director Moyer's presentation later on. I mentioned earlier the additional budgeted lease payments for vehicles that are already purchased. As you'll hear from Ashley Parker this evening, our fleet budget is very minimal for any new fleet. It really is just paying existing leases on fleet we've already purchased. Probably helpful to jump to the last line here, which will be reflected in the next screen. Our team that manages this broad array of assets on the general fund side is not that large, and 1 or 2 key vacancies can really put a hole in our operations. And as such, we have very strategically planned some staffing adjustments in FY25. On the general fund side, there is no increase in FTEs, but targeted reclassifications and tiering. To start up at the top, 3 of our 4 division directors appear to be under market in their classification. So we are finishing that review and have budgeted funds to address that. That includes the division director for technical service, street maintenance, and water resources. We are proposing, in partnership and coordination with our good friends at AFSCME, to look at starting tiering both in water resources as well as in the general fund, to encourage and celebrate our staff who show the initiative to improve their proficiency in work, specifically here with street maintenance, setting up a street maintenance worker 2 and a working 4-person position. We also need to look at our garage maintenance workers who are keeping our garages safe, clean, and graffiti free. They have been on the very low end of our classification band and are doing work now that we're updating our job descriptions that merit a review. We have a project accountant that keeps us financially out of trouble on the general fund and managing tens of millions of dollars of capital projects we've had it open for months, we can't get applications. And we've worked with HR, who agrees to reclassification. And in moving from unbillable to billable work, we're planning to take a planner, one of the two planners in DPW, and transfer to a billable project manager to help deliver on all the capital projects underway, largely outside this building. In terms of challenges, I think it's fair to forecast some of the challenges that this budget doesn't fully address. One is that the amount of capital projects underway with the staff we have is stressing out our staff and putting them at risk of burnout and further departures. We are looking to fill tech services. We have 3 out of 10 vacancies, and that's my major priority right now, is to fill those positions. Hitting the ambitious revenue targets needs to be a focus. Every month we look at financials and see how we're pulling our grant sources down. Challenging gatekeeping. We know the council and we know the administration keeps hearing about new issues or burning community interests, and we are going to struggle this year to stretch beyond what is already in the budget to do new things. O&M, operations and maintenance. We've done a good job for years in funding a lot of new capital, but we have struggled to find the day-to-day general fund dollars to maintain what we build. And that runs across the board in DPW, but beyond, as we'll hear later tonight. And then obviously, I think we've all done a good job in maximizing revenue through grant sources, which is so essential since our service options are so limited. Lastly, I just want to finish up here and say that we really enjoy our work outside of our department, working with other departments, whether it's helping parks maintain parking facilities, running the school crossing guard program for the schools, supporting asset management across the city. It really takes a partnership. Very few large projects in the city get done within. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and maybe just to give Colby a second if you want to reflect anything about the staffing proposals.
Good evening, everybody. So Megan and I met, Chapin and I met, Lee and I met. We are eager for the hearing to come through. It would be a benefit to everyone. It's a benefit to the city for that hearing to come through. The employees will gain proficiencies and certifications that the citizens of the city will benefit from. And the benefit to the employee is that if they're flexing and getting those certifications, that there's a monetary incentive for them to reach another rung on that ladder. So the union's in favor of that hearing system. It's a lot easier to do this than for the union to come up every couple of years and say, hey, for us to be sustainable, raise everybody across the board all at the same time. So in collaboration, we're really excited for this. And as the employees are able to reach up that rung on the ladder, the city's there for them.
Thanks, Colby. Happy to answer questions.
Great. And the other 15 people. So well done, team. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
All right, so questions?
We'll take it.
Questions from counselors, or Chapin or anyone from this team on the presentation? Mr. Barlow?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Kind of amazing amount of work to sort of your department. So I know it's a complicated thing, but something I always sort of bring up every year at this time is street capital. This year I'm going to focus on sidewalks because I'm concerned about the state of some of the sidewalks, and I know there's a process to use to evaluate conditions of sidewalks. But what happens, I think, is that there are areas where there may be a single block of sidewalk that's like in a horrible shape. I have one around the corner from where I live, which I've shown you pictures of. That is wrong. And it's been like that for 15 years, and it's about that deep. And there's no pavement there anymore. But my point is, I know there's a lot of examples of that throughout the city.
Right.
And I understand the challenge is that when you're doing, there's a certain minimum length of running you want to do with sidewalk pavement. So I guess what I'd like to ask is that I know that there's a limited amount of sidewalk we can maintain this year. But is there a way to be more focused and surgical about what we're fixing so that when we have these real problem spots, if they're just a block or two, a block of sidewalk or we get those like attended to, and then I know severely constrained budget. One of my rights, raising an issue.
Yes. And within this budget, we do have money for short runs, which is what we call the more urgent, safety-oriented repairs that aren't our preferred long runs, which are more economical for the city. We can get more done for the same dollar. But there is money in it for short runs. We can look at rebalancing that to more short runs and fewer long runs. Lee's team does most of the short runs, so make sure you're getting all those onto our list. And I'm happy with the two to talk through how we're doing in providing down the outstanding list of short runs.
And again, just to like focus with a limited amount of resource on those real critical areas that we may not otherwise. We would get to under the normal schedule eventually, but knowing that we're now going to be behind that, to address those soon. My second question was around, I know that we've been talking about the need for like making the vehicles in the fleet last longer, and I'm wondering if we're starting to see an increase in the amount of cost for maintenance because we're keeping things longer and not able to replace them. Maybe elaborate on that.
Yeah, so 3 or 4 years ago, we actually started shortening up the length of time we would keep vehicles such as police cars, light duty pickup trucks, and hopes that there would be some EV options that would come out, which have, and we've been replacing those. Our larger trucks, plow trucks, heavy equipment like that, fire trucks will on a longer replacement schedule. Ambulances are a little shorter, police cars, like I said. But because we don't have a sustainable fund to replace these, yes, our PMs to repairs are going to start. We were doing pretty good for the last couple of years, but they're going to start going more to the repairs and the PMs because the fleet is aging. So yeah,
that's a trend we'll probably see for
Yeah.
the next few years, and is that
Mark's budget is gone up, and yes, we can expect to see those types of expense lines increase and us doing less preventive maintenance on our existing fleet, which is not good asset management.
well, utilizing outside vendors for repairs because we're just having more repairs and not enough staff to attend to them. Or some of the harder, more difficult repairs will farm out to you deal with. That line is also decreased over the last. A lot of that will be reflected in the passion, but it's on the first.
Okay, thank you.
And I think one final thing I will just say is there's constant pressure too when there are new programs like the fire department CRT or the community policing efforts to have additional vehicles. So while it's not growing very fast, our fleet is still growing at a time where we have less money and less time and the fleet is aging. So there's forces running counter to each other that are worrying signs.
I think to touch on what Chapin just said, when these positions are created, I think that needs to be taken into account for the creation of positions through that department, you know, to fund how they're going to get these people from. We have a good shared pool, but sometimes there's just not enough opportunity for that shared pool where that department will need a vehicle, which increases maintenance on my staff inside the fleet.
Councilor Travers?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Spencer, for the presentation.
always appreciate the work of you and your department, always very responsive to constituent concerns, and I'm glad to hear your presentation tonight. Just a couple questions, and I apologize. It's possible that you went over this. The sound is 90% good online, but I may have missed it in the 10%. That's a little bit in and out. My first question is with respect to the specialized equipment line item for parking services. I noticed that that's going up by about $55,000, and I'm just wondering what new specialized equipment is necessary in parking services, especially considering that it appears, we're taking a number of meters out and moving to a more sort of phone-based parking system. And if you don't have the answer right now, that's fine. It's just
I can certainly get that for you. It's either the increased cost of paying tickets online. I believe also in the software purchase. We're on Ames now. Pretty sure it was right, there's some employee shifts on the labor balance, but I will get to you specifically about the contractual line item then.
Okay, thank you. My own thought on that is that I would think that sort of pulling out meters and moving to a more sort of phone-based system should be something that realizes cost savings for the city. I would understand if there's sort of a one-time investment to transfer over to that system, but would be curious if that is it. Would be curious to know sort of what if that's going to be continuing costs going over multiple years, increased over the sort of more traditional metered system. My other question for parking services, there's a $50,000 line item for donations. Is this an intention to continue the fines for food program, or
that is correct?
Okay. I think that's a great program, and would be inclined to continue it. We also just heard the regional programs budget, and there's a lot of great programs that the city is funding there as well. And just as a thought, if there's a way to potentially dedicate fines for some charitable cause this year, maybe it could be one of those causes that the city has already designated to be funding in the regional fund balance. So an opportunity there to potentially consider a change. And I suppose just another thing I'll mention is I don't think it's specific to DPW necessarily, Director Spencer, but it's a sort of piggyback on some comments that Councilor Kane was making, and I'm noticing that as we sort of move through these different budget presentations, that it's not a ton more, but I'm recognizing a somewhat consistent theme of budgeting a bit more for professional and consultant services outside, and just want to make sure that we're taking a very close look at really what's necessary on that line item. I no doubt know that it is, but it is just something that I've been noticing as we've been moving through these different budget presentations. Thank you.
Councilor Travers, I see Councilor Grant. We have about 5 minutes left. So we go Councilor Grant.
Hi, thank you. I understand my fellow councilors' suggestion, but I do think the fines for food is a very important program. I kind of look at it from a public safety standpoint. You can give people food, they're less likely to commit certain types of crime out of desperation. Thank you.
Councilor Grant.
If I can add one piece, it's just the city council has approved, I think it was last year, a 5-year kind of commitment to the feeding chitin through the Fines for Food program. So unless the council wanted to revisit that past action, I think it runs through 2027, and I'm happy to get you the actual date and mechanics of that. Yes.
Councilor Kane.
Thank you. So since the sidewalks came up, I just wanted to clarify. I know we've discussed this a little bit. So I understand it's usually 3 miles per year, is it, of reconstruction? It's going to be 2 reconstruction this coming year. and then 2 new construction for the Champlain Parkway area, is that correct?
Yes, so we've tried to get 3 miles base through just our local funding. This year, with 2 miles of local funding, we will be also able, through the Champlain Parkway, to get about 2 miles, as you refer, of shared use path and or new sidewalks. As you're seeing right now, Pine Street is getting entirely new sidewalks. Lakeside Avenue got new sidewalks. That's calculated in that 2 miles. So we actually will achieve the 3 miles this year, but next year is looking like it will be a very difficult year.
Thanks. So in the capital budget, that's like item 842 sidewalk reconstruction, right? And looks like that number is, I think it's like 850,000 proposed, and then proposed out at like 1.8 million for the next bunch of years. So it's gonna like double, is that right, moving forward after this year, or am I reading that correctly?
Our sustainable need is around that 1.8. That money is not, it doesn't exist at this point. It is generally the need. So the money that you saw in the budget is supplemented as well, not only from bond funds, as actually we'll talk about, but also from street capital tax. So those 2 funds together are what are paying the 2 miles of sidewalks this year.
So 1.8 per year is like the aspirational level.
At least that, yes.
Okay, and as far as you know, is there any way to cover that difference for this coming year, or is there any avenue to get there?
Through the capital projects that we have, that, you know, like the Parkway is a 2% local match, so we are getting lots of sidewalk for much less than we buy it normally, when we're paying 100% of the cost. We've struggled to balance the capital budget and have eliminated a number of funding projects, such as our bike walk projects and our traffic calming projects that have been reduced in this budget that we'll talk about later. So we're already making tough choices. I don't know where the extra money.
Thanks. Then I have a lot of questions about traffic and parking, but there's going to be a separate.
Yeah.
So I'll
Great.
Any further questions?
I made an executive decision to talk, but it's really hard to hear with the band. If somebody has a better suggestion, we're gonna move it, like, or we die of heat.
We're gonna get it behind the mayor, who's been at 86-degree temperature room
Okay.
all day today, so I'll make that call though later.
Okay.
I appreciate that. I wanna make sure everyone can hear. It's actually way cooler down here, so I feel like I'm just fine right now. All right, any further questions for Department of Public Works?
Round 1.
Round one. Okay, seeing none online or in person. Chapin, thank you for that, and
Yes.
round 1 presentation. Leon? Yes. First step up.
Excuse me, cough. Hi, I'm Megan Moyer, Division Director for Water Resources, and we get to have the pleasure, because our water resources budgets are enterprise funds. They are separate from the general fund that Chapin was talking about here. And all of our money does come from ratepayers, not from taxpayers, although many times that is the same person. Just to start off quickly, the color-coded org chart, I have the pleasure of overseeing about 60 water resources professionals. The brown is largely the people dedicated to wastewater. The people in the regular blue are both people focused on drinking water. The 2 in green are focused on stormwater. The red folks are in our customer care billing counting sort of sector. And then the rest of us in the tealy light blue are what I call the one water folks, because we are constantly, and I mean constantly, bouncing between drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater, each of which 3 separate budgets, 3 separate regulations, 3 separate sets of infrastructure. I'm pretty proud of the work that we're able to do with 60 people. I am jealous of other enterprise funds and other utilities that have far more people, and that is something that I've been slowly trying to address. We don't need that many people, but I think we do need some more people, different people, and some of this year's budget starts to, or continues to look at that. Similar to Chapin, you know, we really focus on resiliency, and I've listed all of my resiliency principles that I sort of consider when I'm approaching any given budget year, but it really centers on an intersection of the financial resiliency, infrastructure stewardship resiliency, as well as staff resources. I think for a long time, the city has unfortunately not thought about the staff resources part of the three-legged stool. We've been very focused on the financial and very focused on infrastructure, but we have to have, in fact, a three-legged stool, otherwise it would tip over. The things that are sort of major importance in FY25, I've highlighted in blue, which is using careful use of any excess fund balance or reserve for reasonable one-time expenses. We don't ever want to be using those for ongoing expenses, but when we have a once-off, like a $200,000 HVAC system that needs to be replaced, or a $150,000 elevator repair, I think it's appropriate to use those things, and also to be a little bit more careful. Some of our expenses end up kind of being averages. Matt and his team use a lot of chemicals, so does water, and it all depends on when we draw down the tank as to when we have to spend the money, and so we often have reserves left in that account, and we kind of want to figure out how to do it on a sort of average basis. Most of my presentation today is really focusing on the annual operating budget, and I want to remind you, we do have our whole own separate capital funds, each of which is related to the enterprise fund. And in 2025, we are going to be very close to drawing down the remainder of our 2018, the $30 million wastewater stormwater bond. We're going out to bid for stage 0, which is a very small portion of what the wastewater plant needs. And that will get us very close to having drawn down that full amount, unless we're lucky enough to somehow get a giant grant from the state, then we'll have more funds. And we are also, as we've communicated to you all, planning for very likely for a November 2024 bond, because we have drawn down that amount and still have work to do. We're also on the infrastructure side, really trying to stay ahead of this big push for housing, right? It's a great idea, densification, but you got to have systems to support it. And so we're trying to stay out ahead of what that means for our infrastructure, not just the plant, but even all the pipes in between. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we're continuing to improve organizational resiliency through a variety of staffing changes. I can't really see that very well. I just think it looks fine. So what I have are 2 pie charts here. On the left, you have the revenue, and on the right is the expense side. And basically our revenue, we've diversified our revenue portfolio since FY22. We used to really rely entirely on volumetric usage. And in FY22, when we launched our affordability program, we started to bring in things like fixed fee. So there were a lot of our costs are fixed. And so it is appropriate to have some portion of our bill be a fixed fee. We associate that with the size meter that we have. We also brought in charges for fire, private fire protection. That is a service that we do provide when somebody has a hydrant or they have a fire service to their building that enables them to have a restaurant, certain type of commercial establishments, and that requires us to have bigger pumps, bigger pipes, so on and so forth. That's a fee that we've been ramping in over 5 years, and we're in the 4th year of that ramp up. As many of you may know, for stormwater, the way we get our revenue is to actually charge based on the amount of impervious surface, rooftops, the pavement, so on and so forth. And that process hasn't changed. On the expense side, I'll read some of these off to you. A large chunk of our operating costs are our personnel, right? We have this talented team. We need to have a lot of people. We're running 24/7. You can't really go slim on making sure we have the right people. On the dark blue, operating and maintenance, sort of other water resources internal, this ranges from repair and maintenance costs, professional and consultant services. We do so rely on professional consultant services, chemicals, max budget, $1 million of that is for sludge disposal. So there's a lot of other stuff that goes into producing clean, safe drinking water and cleaning the water before it gets to the lake. We, like lots of enterprise funds, do contribute payments to the general fund. This is not billable work that they bill us for. It is a sort of lump sum calculation for the indirect. And then we have, for however many decades, paid a pilot fee to the general fund, which is unfortunately related to the value of our assets. And so there's a tension that Catherine and I have been working on, because as we increase and replace our assets, that pilot is going to go up. certainly great, could be great for the general fund, but it's just gonna get passed around to the ratepayers and we need to maybe figure out how to meet both of our needs, but the remainder is for capital. We have a small amount of what we call pay-go capital, so that's the annual capital nugget. Usually for smaller type projects. And then the lighter green is the debt service at 12%. That piece of the pie, the debt service, is the one that over the next couple of years and decades is going to get very large because we have much that we're going to have to finance, and there still is not funding out there that would help us address that debt service pressure. Whoops, I went too fast. As I said, we're carefully using fund balance. I have a little asterisk there because I think that fund balance deficit number is going to go down slightly based on some revised numbers I got from CT, which is great. But the important thing is even with using this fund balance, because we have retained earnings, so I go through at this time of the year and I look at all my lines and I sort of reasonably and conservatively figure out how much money we may have left, right? Because I did my best to budget, but sometimes we don't spend all of the money for any variety of reasons. And I'm tallying that up and making sure that that number is much bigger than the number that I'm saying that we're going to use to make sure that our savings account, if you will, is still trending in the positive direction. That said, I did some of that to keep the rate increase at a reasonable pace. It would be my budgetary preference as the steward to not use any fund balance and to just be building up my savings account because, you know, I'm always afraid that we're one emergency away, $1 million sewer siphon break away from not having enough money. And given also where the general fund is, right? When they were flush with cash, it was a little easier to go a little closer to the line, but I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. If you would like me to not use as much of my fund balance, I would be happy to bump up rate a little bit, but we got to hold everything together and make sure our ratepayers are able to keep going on. We are with that fund balance still meeting a target or higher than a target of 120 days of cash on hand. So that's sort of a general ballpark for how much money you kind of want to have in the bank to either address a revenue shortfall and also your cash flow needs. With the FY25 budget, we are looking at a almost 11% or 11% increase over FY24 in overall expenses across the fund. A significant portion were just purely existing personnel cost increases, largely on the benefits side. And I don't know if those were ones that were catching up with us. I know there's work being done on how we keep track of those. Another piece was the piece that Chapin mentioned where we are taking over collection system maintenance. And so there's a budgetary impact on our side to be taking that over, mostly because we wanted to make sure we backfilled Lee's budget on the general fund side with some additional work. We have infinite amounts of work. So if you want to give Lee 18 more people, I could probably keep them busy with the work that we have. Couple other things in miscellaneous. A new thing for this year is that, so water is part of their process. They actually send a very large volume of wastewater to the wastewater treatment plant. It's not really high strength waste, but it is taking up space at the wastewater treatment plant. And they have never paid wastewater for that. And so the cost of service is a little skewed on the water side, which is really important when we start talking about how we charge our wholesale customer, right? If we're not fully accounting for that, then they're actually getting a really good deal. And so I brought that into this budget for the first time because really we need to start making it a little bit more equitable. We did see an increase in our pilot. Also, there had been a credit situation, and so the overall increase in our pilot did jump quite substantially. And then the last piece is the money that is needed for the FY25 staffing resiliency plan, which I'm going to get into briefly here. Okay, I think I can get through it. Right. I provided a lot of information in the presentation, mostly for you to read through, so I'm only going to go over my sort of high-level slides. The major goals were to incentivize staffing excellence through tiering, as Colby said, making sure that we are compensating people commensurate with the responsibility and skills that they have, constantly trying to improve succession planning. When I have somebody leave, it makes me panic because we don't always have a person who's ready to step up. And we want to pursue operational efficiencies through staffing structure, through the transfer that we're talking about with the collection systems team. And then me personally, and the city, we have to increase division level leadership bandwidth. I have talented people like Matt, but Matt is trying to run 24/7 facilities, so he's constantly putting out fires, meaning that Matt and I don't get to sit down regularly and actually work on how we're gonna make this better. I need him to have more time to engage with me on really important continuous improvement things. There's a whole number of things in our staffing proposal. I go into greater detail in the next slides. I also tried to break it down more simply into sort of these categories and what the actual actions are, whether it's a reclassification or transfer or a position addition. That far right column is the new positions. Overall, we're only proposing to add 3 positions, but we do have a number of reclassifications that we are proposing, similar to the rest of DPW. I think I already spoke to this about how I kind of worked to mitigate the expenses. On the revenue side, we're continuing to phase in the private fire protection fee. We talked about the wastewater, charging wastewater fees for water. Not seeing any major changes in our usage. We look at that every year, but I think we're going to anticipate and hopefully benefit from the future growth as projects start to come online. Some of our rate increase will be mitigated by the fact that we just have increased demand. At the end of the day, what we are looking at is a proposed typical bill. So a typical bill is a single family residential customer that uses 400 cubic feet. This is not including the 3.5 franchise fee that we pay to the city. We're looking at an increase of 7.7. That still keeps their bill below $60 a month. And for the RAP customers, which are our low income affordability customers who are already or able to demonstrate that they are on a federal program, their bill would be below $50 a month. What you ultimately will be approving is not just our budget, but also the rate table. This comes as part of the budget resolution, and you can see it's fairly complex, comprised of the fixed meter charges on the top end, and then depending on what class of a customer you are, is the rates on the bottom. If you recall from our affordability program, let's see, we worked really hard to keep the water side. If you're a single family customer below 400 cubic feet, your water is it's as cheap as we can get it, right? Other types of customers, multifamily, residential, commercial, city, whatnot, the price is kind of in between those 2 tiers. And for people who still want to use our drinking water for irrigation, we allow them to do that, but they are paying. We still have a ton of work. I've started the projects that we anticipate starting that are actually going to occur in FY25, but every other one of these are the things that we are contemplating for the November 2024 bond. And as I have stressed to many of you, there is still a scarcity of infrastructure grant funding. The money that we're getting from the feds is great, but it barely touches what the need is in Vermont, or certainly the need in Burlington. Want to remind people, we do have a payer affordability program. We want to see it used more, and that's one thing I want to work on with my team to really do some outreach to some of the people or programs to make sure that people are aware of this. And trust me, when I come to you to start talking about November 2024 bonds and what it's going to do to our rates, we're gonna try to figure out how we can continue to turn the dials on how we can keep rates affordable, particularly for our residential customers. We're gonna need money, but how we get the money, is open for conversation. With that,
questions from counselors?
Just an editorial comment. I really appreciate the RAP program and what it's done. I just encourage us to pay highest attention to needs testing. And I use having worked better part of my adult life with older adults. I'm not sure being old necessarily warrants a reduction in rate. So I just toss that out there, that we need to focus on the income of the family and, be cautious. And I maybe offline, there's even with the organization of nonprofits, some have a lot more money than others.
Yeah.
So I think the route is important for those that really need it, and I just want to make sure that exactly.
Some of the enhancements that I would like to see and would love to work in collaboration with other parts of the city who may be pursuing affordability things is coming up with making sure we're not just helping the lowest income of the low income tier. It's like the upper of the low and
Yes.
the lowest of the middle. But we don't have the administrative capacity to be doing those salary reviews. So how can we get it
Yeah, I mean,
done
I think
together?
that's a really interesting point, and we should, benchmarking it, and, maybe there are other, I mean, this is sort of wafting into other conversations about, what do we know about the homestead credit, or, what are there other benchmark programs other than, federally assisted programs, and I think we should put our thinking caps on and try to figure it out.
I think VGS, they pay somewhere at the state to do their income verification. And I know that BED has an affordability program, and collectively, we all want the same thing, and we need some additional data on customers and income verification without customer care staff having to do it. Like, I will chip in on that bill because I'm able then to extend the benefits to people. The other piece that we've talked about is renters. There is still, and we keep scouring the nation, there is not a great way to get to renters. I have one example that would gonna require a heck of a lot of creativity that we're still trying to conclude, but.
Well, the state does have a renter program, and I don't know, I mean, part of the problem is matching the state and city data, and that's a whole other conversation to be had.
The project, major project, budget project.
Yes.
For this coming year, say, Councilor Barlow?
Yes, very briefly, are any of your budget assumptions built around the success of the November bond vote? Or you don't know how that'll go?
If I had a crystal ball and I knew that wasn't happening, then I would not be having it. I probably would be saving and squirreling away all of my money. I would be jacking up how much pay-go capital, because we'd have to just start paying for things. And that is going to be one of the interesting things when we talk about the November 2024 bond proposal is if we don't do it, I'm going to have to fix things anyway, and our budgets may skyrocket out of control anyway. And by actually having a bond and being able to draw it out, like, that would be potentially some modeling that I would try to do.
No, I'm assuming we'll have it. I know there's a lot of work that's gone in preparation and will continue in preparation for that bond request. I don't know how voters are going to respond on that, how much you're depending on a successful outcome.
Have to have hope, otherwise I would be in a different.
I guess it just was.
There is not significant capital funding in our budget currently that's gonna anywhere meet the need that we have. So to answer your question, we haven't really budgeted for the need, and that's why we have to have a future conversation.
Well, we go to you, Councilor Carpenter. Anything else? Other councilors before I go to Councilor Carpenter? That's Sarah.
Well, it's really related to this, and just by approving this budget, are we approving your rates for July 1 or?
You're approving the rates that would be effective as of July 1 that would appear on the August bill.
But for instance, if there's a misstep with the bond, then would you in fact need to come back to us and perhaps raise rates mid-year, or I'm just curious?
I don't, I mean, I don't think that we would raise rates mid-year, but FY26 would be a serious conversation of like, if we're not gonna have this bond, what are the projects that we now need to pay cash for? And just like your house, like you're still paying for it.
And I'm more curious, just because the process, is there any prudence in waiting till November to approve rates, or should we approve higher rates now? I mean, I'm just sort of thinking out loud a little bit around, if it's a drop dead to approve them on July 1, should we be planning ahead a little more and be a little more aggressive with rates July 1, or is there any advantage to not putting them on July 1, putting them on December 1? I'm just put that out there.
Give that a little thought. I try to just take life and cross bridges as they come. So this is what we need to do for FY25, and then if voters aren't able to support what we need to do to support them and support the lake, then we'll have to have our conversations, but.
Right, yes, I mean, as with most bonds that we have gotten approved, the expenses don't roll in until many months out, and so we wouldn't be really needing to pay debt service
Yes.
off until, 26, 27.
If that's your question, yeah.
So we have, this really depends on us being successful in November. If we're not successful in November, then the FY26 budget will have to generate a lot more cash to pay for things on a cash basis instead of bonding.
Yes, there's no debt, the next debt service would be for the project that we're going out to bid for, which with the state SRF, you don't pay until a year after the project is complete, so we're not actually seeing even the debt service on the remaining 14 million for like FY27, 28. So.
And the reminder message I love to give, though it is depressing, is that we are still paying off the debt for the 1993 wastewater plant upgrade for many pieces of equipment that are beyond their useful life. And that we will be paying for that for another 10 years or so, which is really an unfortunate situation that there wasn't a financing plan that had a clear
there was
vision.
a balloon payment that came due that.
Right, 2014 that we weren't prepared for because we didn't squirrel away money. So we're gonna have to do better this time and look forward to working with you all and figuring that out.
It's just one very minor comment, but I happened to stumble across the Blue Water program that works with homeowners on things like gutters and impervious surface. It's great. Okay. But I don't think very many people know about it, and so I'm just.
Yes, and we offer grants, so it's not just a program, but if they recommend that you meet gutters so you can get your water.
I went ahead and did a bunch of work anyway, and I could have gotten a grant, but I mean, I'm just thinking that it's just a nice little program that very good.
There's still grants for stormwater, there's grants for people to fill in their sewer lines, once you know what the condition is.
Yeah.
And then we're likely gonna up, because there hasn't been a lot of uptake, the rebate for water sense fixtures. We have it at $75, nobody's taking us up, so maybe we're gonna raise it to 200 so that people can get a toilet, right? What it's, I'll take the lists. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from councilors? All right, next up.
Thank you. You have made it through 4 different budgets of DPW so far, and here are 2 more. Let me pull up. Share screen. All right, great. So we have 2 budgets here to talk about that are called special revenue funds. They're in the general fund, but are somewhat restricted. Fund 264 is the traffic fund, and 265 is the parking facilities fund. So traffic, this is largely funded by parking meters, and I don't think people fully understand the power of the vitality of downtown and how it really supports our operations. So traffic has 3 main groups: the signs, lines, signals, and crossing guards that Alan oversees. We have a garage maintenance team in our municipal garages, and then we have a parking compliance team, as folks may recall, that came over from BPD during COVID after the George Floyd tragedy. And we looked at recreating the police department. So we have a number of colorful staff members and a number of traffic goals here for this coming year. One of which is to begin returning the traffic fund and parking facilities fund back to financial health. COVID really ate the heart out of the traffic fund is somewhat positioned. It still has a modest fund balance of a couple $100,000. But we really need to make this business more profitable. We're looking at getting rid of single space meters. We've had problems with vandalism. The multi-space kiosks and driving people to phones is really going to be the future. We are going to need to look at adjusting on-street meter rates to facilitate turnover and increase revenue to pre-pandemic levels. We also had a little bit of a whack this year in that the way that impact fees are understood to be eligible is that we are going to be, instead of focusing on signal upgrades for impact fees, we're going to be looking at transportation system upgrades and expansions overall, which means that this team will lose some access to impact fees, which means the meter revenue is all the more important to keep this team going. So as you'll see here, 91% of this team's funding comes from meter revenue. So the vitality of downtown, not only critical to our business community, but is critical to our municipal programs as well. And that that parking revenue funds all of the programs you see down below. One item added this year is part of Great Streets Main Street. The traffic fund is helping subsidize the Courthouse Plaza, which is a private parking garage, be available at city rates of $1.50 an hour instead of what was previously charged, which the private sector was about $5. We can talk more about all these. Here is the overall proposed budget for the year. We are going to end FY24 around $2 million. We're going to be soft at the budget target on the revenue side. So we've knocked down the proposed revenue a little bit, but with our charging for credit card fees, looking at rebound parking rates, we believe we can get back up close to the 2.4. This is just the year by year revenue look, where the top line in blue is 2019 for our on-street meter revenue. The dark black line is 2023. You'll see that's underneath the 2019 pretty significantly, but at least an improvement over the last couple of years. And 2024 is showing some modest progress that we have the first 3 months listed there in green. So there is a slow rebound. We do have a number of ways that the traffic fund, like water, supports the general fund. One, traffic pays for the technical team's work for traffic calming, parking regulation changes, etc., and pays Lee's team to clear out parking meters downtown. So that is 264, has a modest fund balance, depends on parking meters, and pays a whole range of services that I think people may assume is paid for by property tax, but is really paid by meter revenue. Pivoting to 265, these are our municipal garages and lots. We have 2 public garages and a handful of lots. This program is financially in much worse situation and condition. We have not had a positive year income and expense since COVID. We have $3 million of debt from garage capital upgrades that we made back when we were more flush. But we have been unable to pay off that debt. Currently, we're paying interest only on that debt. We need to develop a 5-year capital plan and a turnaround plan that can actually spin off enough money to pay not only our operations, but our long-term debt. I am pleased with the work our team has done to really eradicate graffiti from our garages. If you notice it, please do report it. Our garages do present well. You'll see some of the graffiti, has been even high up on our structures that we had to remove, which takes a lot of time. And then there's biohazards in the garages and sharps and other challenges that our team deals with on a regular basis. This budget is larger than the traffic fund. It's around $3.4 million a year. You're seeing that the off-street revenues, that basically the fees for staying in the garages, funds the majority of the operations. The balance is paid by a special assessment district, an extra tax that downtown businesses pay over and above their property tax to support 2-hour free and a number of other parking programs. 2 main expense drivers are our salaries and our maintenance and operations. We are trying to knock down our bank and credit card fees through new arrangements with processors and charging the end user for those fees. So overall, you're seeing here, we're proposing to grow the revenue slightly, and correspondingly, there's a slight increase in expenses as well. It's largely a business as usual situation here. I will say that these garages are not getting any younger. Marketplace Garage in particular is nearing 50 years old in age and is nearing its useful life unless we consider tens of millions of dollars of upgrade. So we're going to have to discuss whether or not we redevelop the site or whether we rehab the garage for another couple of decades. So this fund also supports the general fund and the wastewater division as well. I talked a little bit about the downtown improvement district, and thanks to the businesses that support these programs. One program in particular, in addition to 2-hour free in the downtown garage, is allowing our low-wage restaurant and retail workers to have access to parking in our underutilized downtown garage so that our low-wage workers can get to work. Personnel changes, there's one reclassification of the garage maintenance workers that we previously discussed. Here is our occupancy. We are seeing recovery. It is a heck of a lot slower than we'd like. You're seeing average occupancy in Marketplace on the right and downtown garage on the left, hovering around 50%. We have more asset available. Used to be that, you know, the big concern downtown was there was a parking problem. That is not apparently what we're experiencing today. So here we are. And the last slide is that we have worked to smartly address some of the revenue challenges. The hotels pay a very discounted rate for overnight parking. We increased that rate from $4 a night to $6 a night. They pass that on to their customer. And we've worked really well with the high school to offer a variety of permits and other items to try to generate more activity in garages. Happy to answer any questions.
Reduce the amount of on-street parking to increase the garage need.
Hold on a second, so we provide public comment at the beginning of the meeting, and so we'll have questions from the counselors first, and if we're under time, I'll allow us to really question. That's just our little. Thanks, so first the counselors' questions, Counselor Kane?
Thanks. So the $144,000 for the subsidy of the courthouse plaza garage, are we committed to that? Or only what has been already?
The council has approved an agreement that the first year we are leasing the spaces, the 85 spaces. If utilization increases, obviously our subsidy goes down because we keep the revenue. But in year 2, we are allowed under the agreement to adjust how many spaces we're leasing. If we can't get the utilization up on the 85 spaces, we can reduce the number of spaces we're leasing.
We can go down to 0.
I need to review it again. I know we can dramatically reduce it. I need to double check, but I'll get you an answer.
Thanks. And this came up, questions about this came up when it was first proposed or when it was voted on a couple months ago. And I think the mayor at the time said that money allocated, you know, as part of the traffic fund that needs to go towards specific things and almost kind of had to be used in this way. So I'm just wondering what else could that money go towards? So for instance, we're only doing one, I think, traffic calming project this coming year, which is very frustrating. People are frustrated about sidewalks. I understand we've had trouble keeping crosswalks painted. So where could that money be used if we're not subsidizing private parking?
Traffic fund monies have to be, they're in these special revenue funds, so they're somewhat restricted. Traffic fund is restricted to investments that control or regulate traffic. So an argument could be made that they could get spent on transportation projects that either control or regulate traffic. It could go to supporting the anemic kind of financial performance of the parking facilities fund, because we have that $3 million of debt that we're paying only interest at this point. So there's a range of options.
Okay, so there's a traffic calming project pitched for East Ave, is it? That's like $300,000 to $400,000. So we could do a project like half that size, smaller traffic calming projects if we wanted to instead of subsidized.
If it meets with our attorney's review of controlling and regulating traffic, which I believe a traffic calming project would, then yes.
Okay, thank you. And I have some questions on other topics. So the residential parking permits, I think you guys presented at the Public Works Commission proposing to raise the price from $10 to $20 per year. Just wanted to check the status of that.
Yes, we did just get the user fee study back, and user fee study talked about an increase, not as large as we had proposed. But we presented to the commission the concept of going from 10 to 20, and the commission was largely supportive. Staff needs to further look at the user fee recommendation and determine what to bring to the commission. But some increase to residential permanent parking is going to be recommended by the department to meet the budget goals.
Commission was not supportive. Almost all commissioners said that it sounded absurdly low.
They're supportive of increases.
Supportive of increases, right? And so are you considering going higher than the $20 proposed for this coming year?
Yeah, we're taking a look at the user fee study. We're taking a look at the commission feedback and figuring out what a recommendation would be.
And it would be effective, the change will be effective July 1st.
Probably a couple of months after, when the commission acts, there's a 1-month warning period for an ordinance to become law. And so it would be after that month after the commission.
Thanks. And then at least one commissioner raised the idea of moving towards a zone system. So I think that's something that you and others have worked on some years back. Can you provide an update on the feasibility of shifting towards a zone parking, residential parking?
Yeah, staff is interested in this. It was certainly recommended in the 2016 RPP study to look instead of street by street, having residential permanent parking managed zone by zone, a larger multi-street area. That is something that I'm open to revisiting. I think the question is, from a workload, that is a larger lift as a policy perspective than tweaking the rate. So in my mind, it's probably adjusting the rate first and then looking at a zone approach subsequent to that. But yes, we are open to that conversation.
I'm sorry, can you hold on a second? I just want to see if they make sure there's sharing time with questions. I know you have a lot of questions, so.
One of my biggest interests,
I
but yeah,
totally
I can follow up
appreciate that.
separately also.
Great, let me just go to Councilor Grant and then see if other councilors have questions. And again, if there's time, we'll come back to you. Councilor Grant?
Thank you. Quick question. The money, the DID money, moved to TIF. Was that related to the audit?
Yes, and thank you, Councilor Grant, for raising that. For folks who aren't aware, or I didn't touch on it in the presentation, that usually the DID funding at 3.5 cents per $100 of assessed value raised around $160,000 for these parking programs. We heard through the state audit of our TIF program that they determined from their perspective that this assessment was a tax, and therefore a portion of the DID tax had to go to TIF. So the same tax rate for FY25 is only expected to give the parking facilities fund about 110 or 112,000, much less than 160. That extra funding will go to help support downtown capital projects, so it's not lost. But it again is hurting the fund that is hurting the most.
Okay, thank you for that information. Maybe not something you can answer now, but just a concern, similar to Councilor Kane. I do believe that the price of the permits should go up, but there have been some issues where people are given permits for certain blocks and then they can't get parking in those blocks, and they park somewhere else that's close to those blocks and then get tickets. And I've gotten a fair amount of complaints about that. So I don't know if we can do like a regional resident permit to expand the number of blocks that people can park at around their home. I do believe it can be an extra source of revenue, but people will definitely resent it more if they can't get a space. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. I will say that, yes, the RTP program is a challenging program to manage. There are multiple interests in our community. And there are many people in residential permit parking streets that don't want other people from other streets parking on their street, because then they will get parked out. But people who are on streets that are already overparked desperately want a zone system so that they can park on other people's streets. So it is a kind of tragedy of the commons policy that we are going to have to deftly navigate.
You should clarify the process of moving towards a zone system. Sorry.
It's the commission approval.
Any other, Councilor Grant, are you all set?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councilor Grant. Councilor Barlow, and then Councilor Carpenter.
Yes, I noticed that the line for security services has gone down. And that seems.
Yep.
Counter to.
So this is in our parking facilities budget. We tripled that amount in previous. We went from 90 to nearly 300,000. So we are looking at reducing that somewhat. We are looking at rebidding service to get a more effective service in place. Safety and security is important. We are looking at various ways to do this. We have our own staff circulating garages, the parking services agents ensuring proper compliance. But we need a better security program, not just investing money that's not delivering us a return.
But until we have another program, it's the number one complaint I hear from constituents and from visitors. They don't feel safe in our parking structures. To increase the revenue on our parking structures, we have to make them welcoming and safer.
Right.
So
it's doubled over past years. It's a slight reduction over this last year.
Yeah. Then my second is more of a comment about the DID. Yeah, my understanding, I haven't looked into it yet, but I intend to, is that it's just the framing of this thing. It's called a quote unquote tax. And if we just call it a fee with a charter change, we can push this. And so I'm supportive of that. And I guess my question is not for tonight, but to take away is that if we were able to do that and get a charter change on for say November, get that changed, could we then get that revenue, keep that 60 grand or whatever it was. If we take it away.
I think we'll need to work with our city attorney and to understand specifically, what avenues may be available to us to.
Because it is a fee, it's just called the tax and charge. I understand.
So,
okay, that's all I have.
We would welcome you in our debate with the state auditor.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Barlow. Councilor Carpenter.
Two things, I just wanted to piggyback on what Councilor Barlow talked about, the security in the garage versus increasing use of it, and the cost benefit of if revenue is low, is actually more security. Rightly called the best people walking around. Is there a cost benefit to actually having more security relative? I had having a function in June, and I had to talk on pretty friends to say it's okay, we park up. And I think just promoting it and cost benefit of whether actually more security, you get more parking and marketing of that. I think that's the other thing. It's gotta be visible, it's gotta be seen, it's gotta be buzzers easy by. So the other question was about your move to away from meters, which I appreciate, but there are still a lot of people who don't have a credit card. I'm presuming, but correct me, you'll also have kiosks as well, which is to say, all you deal in is cash, you still can use the kiosk.
So Alan and I have had many long conversations about this. We understand the interest to have multiple ways to pay.
Yeah.
We are piloting on one section of South Champlain Street, a phone-only approach, as other communities have done. But all the other areas we're piloting also have a kiosk available for those who don't or can't or don't want to use the phone. There always is a call-in option if you don't have a smartphone to pay through Park Mobile on a phone. But
I did not realize that.
Yeah.
something that, yeah,
My parents that.
yeah.
So I really appreciate that, actually.
So we're trying, we have to figure out, you know, the smart meters that we have downtown are extremely expensive both to purchase and to operate.
And I absolutely get that, I just.
Comes down to education. A lot of the older folks don't realize that our kiosk takes coins. I was on the bank the other day, and I had an elderly couple ask me about it. And when I explained it to them, they're like, oh, we love that idea. So I think it's all about education and the folks that know how credit cards don't use them.
Actually, this is talk offline, it's I'm also thinking if we want to promote these garages. The bus pass, could you buy a pass to the garage at a discount to encourage you to park there, you know? Think of some things like that, it sounds like at this point in time, half the parking, so we wanna, or have the spaces.
Yeah.
So how do we get folks to use them?
That's right. Yeah, so part of this is a downtown activity issue, and we can't wait for City Place to open fast enough, as downtown garage has always been an underperformer. Marketplace has been more in high demand, and summers will rise up over 50%, but downtown garage, you know, is full for the eclipse, but I would bet anybody dollars to donuts that besides July 3rd, downtown garage will have space every day for the rest of the year.
Well, we took back things.
Council Carpenter. Any other councilors before I go back to Councilor Kane for 2 minutes? Seeing none, all yours for 2 minutes, Councilor Kane. What do you got?
Rapid fire then. Yes, you're proposing to increase the rates on meters, street meters, is that right?
We are evaluating, looking at places, I believe, yes, our ground meters at 40 cents an hour, while it is a low cost, it's so low cost that I don't think it's creating the turnover we want, so we are trying to look at what part of downtown do we need to increase turnover and how to make the price for it. Yes.
And then there's a program for free restaurant, and retail, and way parking, is that right?
Correct.
Seems like a terrible programming. Is it, I mean, it specifically subsidizing one mode of transportation for, I mean, we'd be better off giving the employees money, cash, and then they could ride their bike and keep the money or do whatever they want. You know, the government, I view the government's job as incentivizing people to, you know, be less car dependent, right? It's our job to create the incentives. I think incentives like subsidized parking, free parking are terrible incentives. There's also 2-hour free parking, is that right?
There is 2-hour free parking.
Yeah, I also question that, and then as to the garage maintenance, so you said was it the marketplace garage that has more garage maintenance issues?
That is the older of their garages, yes.
Okay,
So,
just want
yes.
to touch base about the investment we're making in that garage, given that we may not want to keep it, or we may not want to invest in it appropriately to keep it, so just what upcoming investment is there in that garage? I wouldn't want there to be like new elevator coming in and then us decide in a year if I can persuade my colleagues for us to shut the garage down and redevelop it.
This is the last.
Yeah. We are planning to start a planning process to look at what our options are. Whether rehabilitation of a garage is a right move, or whether redevelopment of the lot, including a garage or not including a garage, makes sense. Those will be public conversations with the council and the commission. I hope to start that this fiscal year in 25, but we have to get our day-to-day operations more profitable first. But right now, the city does not have funding, does not have a fund balance in these funds to contemplate a large capital project at this time. We just did put in a couple $100,000 to secure the marketplace garage for a few more years, but we're going to need to infuse it with some more capital soon.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Time.
Thanks, team.
Thank you very much. A lot of hard work, all these such a very much appreciate it.
We'll stay for the next one as it's related as well.
Exciting. Next up, we have a presentation on our capital and fleet. I have Ashley coming up. Welcome. Let's get settled. Introduce yourself. Get started on this.
Hello, good evening. My name is Ashley Parker. I am the city's capital program director. And I'm here to talk to you all tonight about the proposed FY25 general fund capital budget. And we have a 5-year capital forecast, capital plan that we are also bringing forward for your awareness. Hopeful adoption. My slides tonight, I wanted to go through basically just a refresher for us essentially of what is general fund capital, how it's defined for our purposes. You know, the city's code of ordinance does define the capital project as one that is funded wholly or in part by the city of Burlington. And it often involves the construction, renovation, remodeling, building structures, parking facilities, street improvements, streetscape improvements, park recreational construction, and remodeling. It does not generally include repair or maintenance. And it is supposed to reside outside of a department's operating budget. The city also does have a capital asset policy that in the last 6 months, we have been actually in the process of revising, which will help us better define our capital assets and our thresholds of those capital assets. The general fund capital budget is composed of these components. So we've got DPW and the various these various assets within that: streets, sidewalks, bridges, and the police. We have parks and the facilities team within the parks department. We have INT, our police and fire assets, and then I always add public art because that is a new requirement for our 1% ordinance. So that's an important one to remember that comes out of our budget. And then the two TIF district budgets have fallen within the general fund capital budget in the last at least couple of years. We also have an interdepartmental capital committee, which functions to review funding requests for new and additional needs. And it has also historically recommended the annual capital budget each fiscal year. And the members of that group, again, are most of the members you'll see define what is included in the general fund capital budget. But in addition, it also includes folks from CEO as well, that help us oversee, and INT actually. I don't know, that was a good. Anyways, I have been the liaison for this committee, so I bring everybody together. We do both bi-weekly meetings throughout the year, with our month of April being the most strenuous with the budget season. Essentially, the committee does have a formal operating procedure that we revised and updated in 22. The overall goals are really to prioritize the city's capital projects and purchases, and to hopefully, do better planning and the job of equitable distribution of those limited resources that we have. The committee has also been striving to put together a 5-year capital plan. So this one that you'll see tonight is, I think, the first since I've been here. So I'm hoping to do something like that every year, where it's reviewed and updated every year so it matches what our needs are. And as we go through funding requests every year, the departments are expected to present their funding requests and needs post-budget approval if there's anything new that comes through. And we even break that down further, where somebody has a specific IT fleet or facility need. We really recommend that folks go through those teams to bring their proposals so we can prioritize again better planning. The biggest thing I would like to remind everybody is that the capital budget is a little bit different in that it operates on a carryover budget, which means that any funds that remain unspent in a project budget at the end of a fiscal year carries forward for use into the next fiscal year. So when you're reviewing this year's fiscal, this next fiscal year budget, you're looking at all new or additional need budgets that teams are requesting for use on their projects. And so I'd like to remind that because it can be a little confusing. Yeah, I think I'll end here to move forward into the next set of slides, but I'm always happy to take questions later. I felt it important to give you guys an overview on where we're at with our $22.8 million general obligation bond that was worked in March of 22. On the next slide, you will see how that is looking to date with our expenses allocated in 23 and 24 and the proposed allocations in 25. We are pretty nearly on target for all of the categories that are part of the original ask. One of the things we've been able to do with these allocations is spread our money a little bit farther because we were able to receive premiums from the 2 bond draws in 23 and 24 that weren't expected, so it gave us a little bit of extra money to work with. And we also were able to utilize our annual bond by charter, which is a $2 million bond that we receive every year to take some of the pressure off of these draws by spreading, I guess, the love around a little bit more. So you'll see the breakdown there. I think I'll go on because some of the 25 notes here I'll be commenting on in the budget proposal itself. I wanted to also just give you a quick overview of what did we do in 24. Essentially, you'll see here the listing of the revenues that the capital budget received in 24, and a quick, our major capital projects that we allocated funding to in 24, which was 79% of the overall capital budget. And you'll see a large share of that was transportation projects. We have just under $1 million in project management costs, and then $500,000 going to an important outstanding project with parks. One of the other things that's not on this slide I will make note of is last year we did put about $1.6 million into the capital contingency fund to hold it for local matches to make sure that they didn't go anywhere. And as of now, we have allocated that money to local matches, so that money has been used up. This other slide, I just wanted to share with you the other parts of the capital budget that didn't show up in the major project slide. These are all things, generally speaking, that didn't meet the criteria within the general obligation status and truly only has funding on the annual bond by charter category, I guess. So those are mostly INT, police and fire asset type purchases. I wanted to note the Fire Station 2 project because it was a really important project that we did last year with some bond premiums. It helped us upgrade the facilities there to be more gender neutral and to provide more support on the equity side for that station. So that was a really important one that we were able to get to in the last fiscal year. And now the FY25 budget. I apologize, I don't have that, I guess. But the revenues.
Not you. I got you.
Thank you. The projected revenues for 25 are shown on the table there. So you'll see everything from remaining bond premiums to expected bond draws to dedicated tax usage and other revenues that we're expecting for the year. We have a pretty balanced budget here. The projected expenses for 25 are coming in around 38.9 million with the revenues at 39.3. And I wanted to show you all what the breakdown of that composition is, the revenue composition. 63% of our revenues are grants that we bring in, and 22% is the bond proceeds, and 12% is dedicated tax funding. So, like I said, this year's budget is balanced, and it's again maintaining our commitment to the voters that we promised in March of 22. This will be the final bond draw from the $23.8 million general obligation bond, and that will be a $5.8 million draw this year. We are also utilizing all of the remaining premiums from 23 and 24 to support our projects, and that came in around $745,000. I am hoping for some 25 premiums, which will also help our needs in 25 as we move forward into the fiscal year, but I don't know what that is, so stay tuned. But what is really, I think, exciting about this budget is it is starting to address a lot of our deferred maintenance needs across multiple capital assets that we've been tracking in the last couple of years, especially. And I wanted to bring those numbers up for you all as a reference point on this slide. I presented this material last year, but we're still projecting about $27 million of need in parks deferred projects, $15 million of deferred needed facility projects. We have at least a $5 million need in deferred vehicle replacement for fleets and the sustainable revenue source issue there. And then our street paving goal is to pave streets for 4 to 5 miles a year And this year's budget is only at 1.5, I believe, the county year paving contracts, and they have, DPW has shared that the need would be close to $3 to $4 million a year. I just wanted to give you a quick, these are some of the quick highlights. You will see a more detailed listing of all of the proposed project allocations in your packets for tonight. These are some of the highlights from it. This budget is proposing to allocate funds to officially complete phase 1 of the Parkway and then kick off construction of phase 2 for the Parkway. We badly need to replace 2 of our fire station bay floors, fire station 1 and 2, and so that is proposed in this budget. The Miller Center project, we have some end-of-life RTUs, rooftop units at that building that staff recently discovered had rust starting to form already on them. So they need to be replaced. And to do that in an effective manner, we decided to turn this one into a net zero energy project. So not just replacing the RTUs, but also making probably the first net zero energy project in the city for one of our city-owned buildings. And so in this budget, what I have proposed is using hopefully $1 million from the sale of 200 Church to also offset the $500,000 that would come from bond proceed allocations. So this is an important project that is one of those becoming urgent needs for our community, and I want to explain that one a little bit. We also have HVAC issues at the police station, $575,000 going to continue correcting those. And City Hall is also on this list, which with HVAC needs. I mentioned the street paving contract already. We have a couple of North Beach projects which are aimed at helping us generate more revenue at the campgrounds. We've got laundry restroom facilities that are in dire need of replacement and upgrading, and a parking lot that needs to be redone to better suit the needs of that campground. Fire Station 3, similar equity project there. We are doing a bedroom renovation at that fire station, hopefully in FY25, to better accommodate, make it more gender neutral. And we are hoping to support the fire department in replacing about 75 radios that will help round out our major public communication safety upgrade project, which came out of the general obligation bond, a $4 million project. They did not get all the radios replaced in that bond, so this is going to take care of that need. And then our Winooski Bridge local match for FY25 is listed in this year's budget, along with the allocation for public park. I just want to touch briefly on some of our general fleet needs. I did include in your packets, just for informational purposes, an overview of the history behind the city's financing strategy for general fund fleet. And as I think most of you know, the purchases for general fund fleet were frozen in FY24 with a focus moved to covering existing lease payments for FY24. And that's what we did. We utilized some one-time funds to help support that. Our FY25 lease payment for existing vehicles is $943,000. And so CT has been working to increase the equipment maintenance line, which is the lease budget line, to provide some general fund support to cover this lease payment. We're also hoping for $41,000 in sale of vehicles to be put towards that. And in addition, we're going to continue to come up with new strategies for how to create a sustainable general fund fleet reserve. We are actively working to secure tax credits and rebates that will that are for previously purchased electric, EVs. There's another thing I was going to mention. We are also hoping the table would be helpful. That is a good clue. So the table that I provided you. So our fleet, in terms of our $5.4 million deferred needs, this is the most urgent of those deferred needs. So if we are able to come up with any money, this would be the list that our fleet team would point me to in terms of what we need to replace. We are hoping this year to try to go after the state's municipal equipment loan fund. They do a $110,000 request every year with the 2% interest, which would help us go after purchasing something, reducing the cost of the overall purchase price to us. So I think it'd be a good way for us to leverage our general fund cash with some support from the state. I just wanted to give you guys a quick overview of what our TIF district budgets are. Both downtown and waterfront TIF districts are composed of two different types of budgets. One is the capital improvement side and the other is the related cost side. The capital improvement budgets have a TIF financing associated with how we cover those costs, and that's usually through bond or note. And a related cost budget is based on increment that we generate within those TIF districts. So that's tax, municipal, and education. And the downtown side, I think Jacob pointed this earlier, the Main Street project is our only active remaining project in that district. That financing has been completed. The only additional need in that project for this fiscal year is some additional street capital that is being allocated to support a non-TIF paving portion of that project that sits outside of the TIF district, so it cannot be supported by TIF funds. The waterfront district, the remaining capital project there is related to the City Place project, public improvements there, and that again also has ongoing financing associated with it, with the extension of a note for that one. The only additional need for that is a $300,000 allocation from the bond to support the local match need that's connected to the congressionally directed spending grant that was received for that project, for the Reconnecting Communities grant, and that's for work outside of the TIF district there, and that came from the sidewalk allocation for 24 and actually 25. So a total of $600,000 for that. Related cost budgets cover, the soft costs for these projects. They are voter and BEPSI approved budgets that cover some personnel and some administrative professional consultants. That's the word. And these are all fitting within the remaining increment that's available to support both of these districts and their needs. I won't go into much detail here, but I just wanted to be transparent about the 4 dedicated tax budgets that do come into the capital budget. We have our penny for parks, and a full listing of all those projects is also in the project allocation document that I provided in the packet. We also have conservation legacy, and then we have our street capital and green tax split with the street capital the lion's share of that tax. Definitely, I'm happy to go through questions later about more about these if you have questions about the dedicated taxes and what it's going for. But I really just want to refresh everybody's memory and let you know this is what is also in my budget. I then want to just briefly touch on the local match connection to general fund capital. General fund capital has become a major source of funding for all of our grant applications. At this point, in terms of looking at my forecast that you'll see on the slide here for 26 to 30, the need is greater than the funds we're going to have available starting in 26. So we'll have to become really creative and about how we secure other sources of funding to support these local match needs. And it'll also give us an opportunity, I think, to prioritize our projects and encourage more collaboration across departments to possibly figure out better, ways that we can more strategically go after these grants and not, couple different assets out with the same grant application. I think there's lots of opportunity, but I want to just note that it is what I'm seeing over time here. And getting back to what I said about the carryover budget, I wanted folks to be aware of all of the ongoing and active general fund capital projects and purchases that are happening. Even if they're not listed on the proposed FY25 budget, there are lots of projects and lots of things happening that are utilizing existing revenues that they have received. So I wanted to share these next few slides. You will see the listing of all of the projects to date that are still active, and folks are very busy, obviously, throughout the city on all of these projects and all of the new projects. Then lastly, I just wanted to briefly touch on the first 5-year capital plan that I think the council has probably seen in a little bit. This is going to give you an overview of the FY26 to 30. Again, I provided a breakdown by project in your packet, so you can see the distribution over time by project. This is just giving the overall expense by revenues and the funding challenges that we'll be working to solve in the next several years. This is very much a work in progress. I have gotten a lot of really great information from all of the departments and their project teams to get us to this point with these numbers. So I think we're pretty good, but it's a lot of collaboration. What I'm really excited about these annual 5-year plans is it's really going to give us a chance to really check in on what our changing needs and priorities are, which would hopefully give us an opportunity to better plan what resources we need down the road. So that's it in a nutshell. Yes, I think that is good.
It's well done, so much information, just thank you.
But yes, I'm happy to take any questions and go back over anything that, yeah, I'd love to do that.
Especially questions from counselors. Councilor Barlow?
Just more of a comment than a question, and we brought it up, I think, at one of the other budget meetings, and CAO Shad sent me information. It's like the grant team writing grants, many of which require local matches, which I'm assuming coming out of this budget. I think that's like the best money we can leverage. So whatever we need to do to make sure we have the local match requirements to take advantage of these tens of millions of dollars that we can get from on the grant side, it's definitely something we need to do. It's one of the key ways we can fund the things we need to fund without having to.
Councilor Barlow, Councilor Grant?
Thank you. I'm not really sure it's an answer that can be had now, as much of a request for an explanation around fleet. We know that the cost of vehicles is increasing exponentially. We know that from conversations that I've had with Chief LaChance, a secondhand market, because more and more municipalities are going into that market, those prices are increasing. I guess I want to understand the reasoning, and I'm sure it has to do with accounting rules, but it would just be great to have a written explanation. If we know that we can lock in a price now for a vehicle that we don't even get for another 3 years, and be able to lock in a lower price, I guess I like the fact that it has to count in this year's budget, even though it's not going to arrive for 3 years. Am I making any sense?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You definitely are, and it is a bit of a complicated answer, so I think we will respond to you and probably CC the rest of the council with something in writing tomorrow, if that's okay.
That is okay. I understand it may not be a simple, but I mean, these vehicles, just talking to Chief LaChance about it, they locked in something for $350,000. It's costing another municipality now $400,000, and yet another municipality it's like $500,000, because that's how quickly everything is increasing. And so I was just curious about that and appreciate the response. Look forward to it. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Other questions, Councilor May?
Just a quick question about the forecast, the 5-year forecast.
Yeah.
So are those numbers what the local matches, like what we're expected, city would be expected to pay? So for instance, the Moosey Bridge, it's like $2 million a year or something, which is way less than the total project.
Yes.
I'm just wondering in relation to the railroad enterprise project, which is listed in that's just tens of millions there. So is that like what it looks like right now that we would have to pay?
It's total, that one is total cost. So the Winooski one is a little easier because that one is just local match for us. So it's just what we would need to find local match for. The railroad enterprise is actually broken down between grants state funding, and then also local match. And I do have what my projection shows the breakdown for that, but this one is also very much just projections because we are still working to really identify what the funding source would be to support this project. So this is my projection for showing if we got an 820 grant, here is what the distribution would look like over time based on what we know the current costs of the project to be. But that could change depending on the grant source. We've looked at historically some grant options that would be no match and then some that have more match. So it just really depends on what the final solution, what the final supplemental funding opportunity is for that project. But yeah, so these are just very much projections. You can change over time.
Councilor Kane, any other questions? None. Thank you very much, Ashley. Good evening. All right, next up. We're going to hear from our library. There's already going out now. Yeah, we are. It's real. Welcome, Mary. What did you do yourself? And you want to start with your presentation about the Fletcher Free Library? Sure. Thank you. My kids went to that performance. They love that. Yeah. Geraldine. Geraldine. I just reading that from the other.
The elephant and piggy.
It's Gerald, actually.
Yes, Gerald Fitzgerald.
There we go.
Yeah.
I didn't know he's full.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yes, so I'm Mary Danko from the Fletcher Free Library, and I'm here to find out from you all today the impact that access to books and information have had on your lives. No, I'm just joking. I'm here to give you my presentation. I just feel like there's very physical and it's about streets and cement, and mine's about the idea of higher learning and the impacts that some of the different kind of service has on our communities' lives. So I don't know why it's not. Here's our mission and vision statement and our strategic plan, which we've been working very hard to refresh, and it's stalled a little bit. That's my fault, but I'll have more of that next time. So basically, for those of you that have seen my presentation over the years, it's very much the same. Our personnel costs tend to hover around 78%. Our utilities, again, personnel is something that I really can't control. Our utilities is our overhead, can't control that. And our good friends at EED and at Water are raising their rates. We love them, but then we have to account for that in our budgets. Our equipment and leases and maintenance, again, something that I really can't control for the large 47,000 square foot building that we manage. The collection fund is I call it a splinter tax, but the technical name is it's the same thing as penny for parks. There's another name for it.
Dedicated
tax. Thank you very much. So it's a half-cent tax. And so again, no control over that. That's part of the formula that the treasurer's office works out for us. So basically the thing, and security is something, again, that I really don't have any control over. We contract that out. We do have security full time now at the library, and we're budgeting about $143,000 for that. And then we have pulled out our new North End branch, not personnel costs, but just the lease and the general overhead for that branch as 1% of our budget, or about $24,000. So really the only thing that I can really fuss with that much is our supplies and miscellaneous operating things, which is about $29,000. Several years ago, the library budget, all our programming was cut, all our professional development was cut, and travel was cut because Friends, which is the next slide, of the Fletcher Free Library, which is our 501c3 nonprofit organization, supports all those other costs. So we have a very, very, very lean budget with not much to go. But because this has been a challenging year and we're all trying to work together, very hard to close that gap. The library was not a part of the fee study. We don't have a lot of fees, but we do have one fee, and that's for people who want to get a card that don't live, work, or go to school in Burlington. So we have raised those fees to try and be helpful. We have done some reduction in our office equipment and furnishing lines. We're reducing some of our maintenance contracts. We're looking at getting rid of some phones and having people share phones and reducing our overtime. So even as small as we are and as lean as we are, we're trying to do our best. And I will add also, the staff is going to lead. We've had 2 sets of staff that have gone to lean training already, and we have another set that is going on the 30th. The Friends have paid for that. And for those of you that don't know, lean training comes out of automotive industry, and it's really about making sure that you have no waste and being as efficient as possible. So again, in the spirit of these budgetary challenges, we really try to build a culture in our department that we want to save money for the city, for our taxpayers. And we think there is still potential for us to look at those kinds of efficiencies. So I'm excited to see where that goes. And then there'll be quarterly meetings with the library staff who have attended these, and we are going to tackle different projects. So to let you know about the supporting part of Friends, who are just this wonderful, wonderful group who bring us all this revenue from these different areas. And then we get to go to them every year and ask them for an allocation for our programming, for our professional development, and all kinds of good things. When I first started 7 years ago, the Friends were managing about $25,000 a year. They continually increase their capacity, and they are managing about $250,000 a year between the revenue that they take in, and they are also a fiscal agent for many grants, because some grants will only go to 501c3s. So they have taken on that work. And again, they have a very robust donors system, a bookkeeping system, and they have now since hired a bookkeeper to help them. And we just do a lot of great things at the library. And so I tried to tell it in pictures. And we have an amazing staff that is working very, very hard. And we're grateful for the collaborative effort as the city has gone through this budget season.
Mary. I have a meeting record. That's refresher to those of you who are coming afterwards. Noted. All right, questions from counselors. Councilor Carpenter.
Just one more on the library cards. Is it advantageous for us to promote that more? I never thought about people buying cards that weren't from Burlington, but I'm just wondering, didn't know that it could and should be, and does it help or not help?
It could be helpful. I hadn't really thought about that, so I'm going to bring that up to some of our leadership folks. Because we are by far the largest library in Vermont.
Yeah.
We do find people that seek us out, but that doesn't mean that we can't do more.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, I just think if people buy a lot of stuff online, and maybe it'd be worth $50 to join this library and get some of your, or $125, whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's $50, which is like less than 2 hard.
Right.
Cover
So I'm
books.
just thinking.
Yeah, you really get your money's worth.
Yeah. I have. And maybe the mayor's going to address us. We all know you've got a lot of security issues and needs, and I know it was, you mentioned it in your community safety initiatives, but I'm presuming that's not in the budget, so that's something you're going to be working on and proposals to deal with some of those issues. Is that?
That's the hope.
Okay.
I mean, we will give an update more formally, as I said in the meeting that was maybe a week ago.
Okay.
Or so, is that if we were able to find additional revenue savings, if you will, or savings in general, that was above the 13.1, which is the initial gap that we identified a few weeks ago now, then the hope is to do some strategic investments such as the increased needs for the library, which go beyond what they've initially requested
Right.
here. There is a need there, I want to emphasize, I know that. And
not sure how much of an additional amount of resources we're really gonna be able to identify at the end of the day as we continue to number crunch, so I guess stay tuned, unfortunately.
I think that's
the rest of the other needs, including CRTs, other big compelling needs as well.
understood.
But I don't like
think
this up against.
Yeah.
Specifically, yes.
Okay,
And we're happy, we've been included in those conversations and we're really happy about that. And we're, hoping with these collaborative meetings and efforts that we can really identify some low-hanging fruits. So,
I think it's really great, knowing for staff and have a long conversation with one of them today about that you're emailed on, but I just think that's really important.
Councilor Barlow?
Yes, are there any anticipated changes to the operations of the branch?
yes, more programming.
More program.
More programming, we've got, we keep adding programming, we now have a vegan cookbook club out there, we've done computer programs out there, and they are very, very well attended. I actually just emailed Megan and Mike Canterac about their rebate programs, because I think that would be a great presentation to do at the new North End, because I'm hearing people don't know about it, and we could maybe package those together and do a program up there.
Great. The hours are projected to stay more or less the same as they have been. Hours of operation.
Yes, so far.
Excellent. Thank you. I have to apologize to everybody in advance. I have a hard stop at 8 o'clock, so I'm gonna have to talk out after the line.
We will have quorum. People who will have quorum and be able to keep going. Okay, thank you, Councilor Barlow. Anything else from other councilors or the library? Okay, seeing none. Mary, thank you.
Thank you
very much. Thank you to the friends of being here.
Oh, yes.
Oh, can I ask, I'm sorry, a couple years ago, there was a capital campaign conversation. Is that off the table or is that on?
It is still on the table, like I was mentioning, that friends keep building up capacity.
Yeah.
We're actually working on, we did finish the schematic design. The schematic design identified, did a building assessment, and so we're taking care of some of those things. We actually have a couple grants we're working on as well. And the capital campaign committee is formed, and they're starting to do their work. They've met a few times. So it's a big project, but we're really excited.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along. You're welcome. So you can settle, introduce yourself.
Kim Stern, with the City Attorney's Office.
Getting that pulled up, we have only 2 more departments out of this. Yay. Do it. Ready?
Yes, please.
There we go, yes.
Sorry about that. Okay, so City Attorney's Office, we actually should have a pretty quick presentation because we're a smaller department. We have 6 attorneys in staff, which we're hoping to be in fiscal year 25. And 1 paralegal, 1 legal assistant, and a public information officer. That's the current full staffing of what would be the full staffing of our office. Right now, the city attorney position is vacant, the deputy city attorney position is vacant, and 1 of the city attorney positions vacant. So we have 3 out of 6 attorneys currently. Although we're actively seeking and getting closer to hopefully fill us. This is just a breakdown of what it looks like in a org chart, with the city attorney at the top and the legal administrative assistant, and then the deputy and the director are kind of their own subsets, and then the 3 assistant city attorneys and public records coordinator. So the city attorney's office acts as the general counsel for all city departments and projects. The majority of the legal needs of the city are met by this office. includes day-to-day support. We do routine stuff, we do city ordinance enforcement, we work on ordinances, we staff committees and support departments and boards. We generally pretty much do all sorts of things, the things that come to us. We do sometimes have expert counsel brought in that might have, more specific in certain areas than we do. And such as, airport regulation or utility or certain environmental matters. We also have, like, insurance claims will be handled by outside counsel chosen by the insurance company. And we also sometimes retain, outside counsel for conflict of interest areas, or more recently due to staffing. The volume of work that we've been doing, it certainly has been going up in the last few years. This is a list of the outside legal firms that we use the fiscal year 24. 11 of those, just kind of generally noting what they helped us with. So key functions and activities. So each department in the city will have a primary legal support attorney. For example, DPW has Tarek, Robert Christian, Parks has Haley Clenahan, permanent inspections has me. And also, like, specific projects or boards have a primary legal support attorney or paralegal. This just keeps going with, the like elections, Sarah and planning commissions myself. Specific tasks have primary legal supports, for example, like public records requests, Joe and Haley. Parking tickets is Lisa, our paralegal. All city council resolutions and motions are prepared or reviewed by an attorney. All city contracts are prepared or reviewed by an attorney. And all major employee discipline or discharge matters are reviewed by an attorney. So expected internal projects for goals for fiscal year 25. Hiring and transitioning of a new city attorney into the office. Hiring a deputy city attorney and additional assistant city attorney. Those are right up at the top of the list. Work on initiatives to promote retention. We certainly had a little bit of a flux the last few years of different attorneys in the office. So there's some things that we would like to promote for that to help that. And hopefully we can make some strides in that area. Continued review of city ordinances and charter provisions for sections in need of upgrade or removal. And with both staffing, decrease individual workloads and provide more room to work on like long range city initiatives and projects. Continue creating more standardized provisions and practices to increase efficiencies for clients, and with full staffing, therefore increase bandwidth, more enforcement. So the fiscal year 25 budget, main change is in the budget is due to anticipated full staffing. So there is more personnel costs and expenses, operating expenses for more personnel within the budget. In our budget, 83% of it is for personnel. 17% of the expenses are for operating costs. And we do anticipate reduced expense for outside counsel with staff. That is the presentation part. There's
Appreciate it. Questions from counselors?
Just on, we desperately need to fill those positions. I'm just curious, the guesstimate on the delta between, if we can fill those two positions, will we save, will there be enough savings in outside counsel to actually lower the legal costs a little bit, even though we should be, I guess. I'm just sort of curious about. Maybe you can't answer that, because you don't know when you're gonna hire the three.
well, right, and Yeah, but depending when they come in at, and the level of experience will change how much, but. I mean, I'll look back to how much it was last year, but, I think it will certainly. When we get them built, we'll have like more time once they're in, more efficiencies, so you might not see all of the impact immediately, but like 6 months down the road, you can see the impact more.
Have the salaries in that department been more recently market adjusted, not reviewed?
No. Now, there's two of us that had a little bit of adjustment for just because during all the change, we were doing multiple jobs. So there's a couple of us that.
And I just think maybe something I wanted to do.
And certainly thinking about prevent and
preventing
and retention.
Yes, I
patterns that
I
I've
think
noticed now with the community in the last couple of years. So I think it's just yes. All of it. That's part. Other questions from folks?
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from counselors for Kim in the city attorney's office? See that you might have won the new record.
Excellent.
Again, no pressure.
Thank you.
Got a little more exciting, like facilitation. Here we go, it's a meeting, and the former again, you can't wait till I can see that. All right, next up, we have our Business and Workforce Development Department. Once you're settled with your team, you want to introduce everyone?
Yes, Leslie.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Good evening, my name is Cara Almastrawi. I'm the Director of Business and Workforce Development, which also includes the Church Street Marketplace. I have my two assistant directors with me, my Assistant Director Will Lavelle and Assistant Director Samantha McGinnis. Okay. So the department is broken into 3 different divisions: the Church Street Marketplace, which we run full maintenance of the street. We have our own fleet of vehicles. We have a full maintenance team. We also do all the marketing, promotion, events. We do business incubator programs, which I'll talk about in a bit. And obviously, our free programming for the community. Business development citywide is really our business support division. So micro business, we run the Micro Business Alliance for the region. We have a revolving loan fund, a 0% Islam conforming revolving loan fund to support businesses that's directed toward BIPOC and women-owned businesses. We do direct training and technical support for small business owners, recruitment and retention on the larger business side, and more business incubation programs through our markets, which I'll explain again later. And the third division is workforce development. In that division, we also have the Early Learning Initiative, which we view as a workforce development program. And we also are managing grants and training programs through that division as well. This is our basic org chart. A little of the highlights of the year that we're closing out right now. We did receive $1 million in congressionally directed spending for deferred maintenance on the street, so trip hazards, brick repairs, things of that sort. We hosted 100+ events. Some of those were produced by us. Some of those were hosted and produced by community partners. We did an annual survey. Obviously, fourth quarter and holiday numbers are the most important for most of our business community. On the marketplace, 85% of our businesses reported pre-pandemic level numbers, so that was really nice to see. We raised fees last year for the first time in 6 years. We're not raising them this year.
So they've gone up 5% in the last 7 years to make up for some of that deficit caused by inflation and salary and benefits increases. We have increased securing donations from local community partners, which is now becoming a larger piece of our budget. We did some special summer activations, given some of the challenges in our downtown last summer, and added 60 free events, and have increased our marketing and our designated Main Street. What to expect from us in this coming year: hosting more free community events, business incubation through our cart vendor program. We're welcoming at least 5 new brick and mortar businesses. I think there will be more than that. We are supporting increasing diversity. We feel there's not enough diversity in business ownership in our downtown. There is diversity in business ownership in other areas of the city. So we're definitely looking to support that. I meet weekly with the Howard Center Street Outreach Team and the Police Department to address safety issues and concerns related to our employees that work in our businesses downtown. I work with DPW around parking issues, and we will be, you'll see the brickwork done, and it should be finished by this fall. So for that center division that we have, the business support or business development division, we have a $500,000 revolving loan fund. We track that money. We have at the moment we have 100% repayment rate. We have smaller loans that go through Kiva and larger loans which are kept in-house. We have an underwriting committee that we manage in-house, and we have created or retained 80 jobs through this revolving loan program. We've assisted over 70 businesses. You can see majority are women and BIPOC owned, with technical support, helping them get insurance or get licensed with the Department of Health. We have been managing for the last few years the 27 million in ARPA funds. So you'll sometimes see me pop up when ARPA presentations come before the board. We're constantly creating multiple resources, classes, guides, and newsletters for our small business community. We produced a speaker series called How They Built It, which connects sort of people who are desire to be entrepreneurs with businesses that are more established, and opportunities for our small and micro businesses. So this ties into our, when I keep mentioning business incubator. We find that a lot of businesses start out and are home-based. Maybe they cook food, things like that. We have been able to give them spots in our summer and winter market, which are held in City Hall Park. It gives them exposure to a customer base that they wouldn't normally have, and it's sort of a chance for them to test their wares. If that works out for them, they can work with us to get a 0% loan from our revolving loan fund. And we have had proof of concept already. So we have had vendors that were home-based, have now been in the markets in City Hall Park, have gotten a loan from the revolving loan fund, have used that loan to purchase a cart, and are now a cart vendor on the marketplace. So that's sort of our feeder program that we have. And as we know, some major businesses in town, including Skinny Pancakes, started as a cart on the marketplace. So this is our way to ensure that our business community remains local. Over 90% of the businesses in Burlington are locally owned, and this helps ensure that we continue to grow new businesses within our city and are also reaching a diverse population. What to expect in fiscal year 25, increasing technical support, classes, loan education, marketing. We also have office hours at the One Community Center, so that people who are thinking about starting a business can easily access us. We also run the One World Market, which is an association with the Ramble in the Old North End, and we continue to use Love Burlington as our marketing arm to amplify all local businesses. and continue to manage our revolving loan fund. We're creating a Burlington business database, which I think will be of large assistance to the city on lots of levels. You may or may not know businesses are not required to register with the city when they open. And so by creating this database, we're hoping to try and be in touch with all the businesses. We have a parklet program. You'll see it got loaned out this year to 88 Oak Street Co-op, which is Poppy and Fancy's. And that's going well. And we are launching what we're calling a community cart, which is a cart on the Church Street Marketplace, that different food producers and micro businesses can have a shot at running it for a weekend or a week, and see if it would work for them to grow their business. Workforce development. We have focused on a real bottleneck in our community, which is workforce for our daycare centers, early childhood education. We've run 2 cohorts. We had a great group of Somali women who just went through our most recent cohort. So we have added 31 early educators to our local area childcare centers. We also have helped support social and emotional training certification that mirrors the social and emotional training that is in the Burlington school system, so that there's a continuity of care for the children. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we see the Early Learning Initiative as a workforce development program, and as you can see, 85% of the families who access our care needed to stay employed. We also provide grants to childcare centers so that they can increase or expand their size and increase their populations. What to expect for us in the coming year. We are right sizing, to borrow a phrase from the mayor, our Early Learning Initiative program, given that Act 76 is starting to roll out, and trying to use more of those funds to support the industry itself. We are starting with Seed and Sow. We're partnering them for a substitute teacher program. As you know, there's substitute teacher pools for the public school system, but there isn't for childcare facilities, which often leaves working parents stranded. We are managing the $1 million of workforce development funding that came with the RAISE grant. That is the grant that is going to bring our Bank and Cherry Streets up to Great Street standards. We will be offering free construction 101 training, weatherization, heavy equipment operation, and that will be over the next 4 years. And we are also planning to launch an industrial sewing workforce development program with Forbital Factory in the South End, and which trains people on machines that are used in area businesses like Vermont Flannel and Skida. This is just, I threw this in because we get a lot of questions about businesses opening and closing. The underlying businesses are ones that we worked with directly to either help them, support them, help them get through municipal hurdles, state hurdles. Those with the asterisks have been recipients from our revolving loan fund. Budget overview. This is the Church Street Marketplace. The Church Street Marketplace fully funds itself. As you can see, the common area fees provide 67% of our income. We are also relying on donations from corporates to keep us going. We have other fees that we charge and advertising revenue, and maintenance expenses have been heavily hit by inflation. So a lot of our expenses go there. And for business and workforce development, which is more related to the general fund budget, the large revenue piece you see in there is related to some reliance on grants. And in addition, some of the revenue we have that is annual funding for the Early Learning Initiative program. Key takeaways from this budget is we are relying more on grants. We've secured state and federal grants and reduced operating costs, effectively reducing our budget by 30%. We have weaned ourselves off of all of our one-time funds. And as I said, we are sort of right-sizing ELI to appropriately respond to the rollout of Act 76. And that's my team on the lower right-hand corner. And these are some of the businesses that we've helped. And I'm open for questions.
15 minutes, well done.
Boom.
Boom. Right, counselors, questions for our members of our team?
Sure, Tim, I can't find it. It's the general fund support on the department.
So it depends on if you're adding ELI in or not, and ELI does come from the general fund, but it's dedicated funding for the program,
So that, and Church Street Marketplace covers itself.
Church Street Marketplace covers itself.
And ELI was a specific.
Is a dedicated funding stream, exactly. And I think I'm down to 187,000 is what I take from the general fund.
Okay.
And in addition, to help explain why that's so low, a lot of our funding, our salaries, I have, for example, the marketing team will market 50% of their salary will come from the marketplace because they're spending time marketing for the marketplace. And then when they're marketing for outside of the marketplace and other small businesses, then that draws on the general fund or grant source funding that we may have.
Councilor Bergman, hi.
Hi, I've been listening, but so I'm interested in the workforce development on the energy, the weatherization and what have you, and trying to get a little bit more detail, and also just invite you to participate with others as we go through this review of building emissions reductions. One of the things that we've heard over the last 2 years, that since we've adopted the weatherization ordinance in the minimum housing code, is that there aren't enough people doing that work. So we need to be getting out of our silos and working together on this. So perhaps you could just give a little more detail to that, and then I just extend that invitation for you to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, so I have heard about the conversation with the building, and I would love to be the building carbon emissions, so I'd love to be involved in that. It does have some impact on small businesses, but it's also obviously an important step to take, so I would love to be involved in those discussions. So this RAISE grant, so what we're seeing coming from large capital grants from the federal government is they're starting to have a workforce development component to them. This one, it's just under the quote unquote umbrella of construction. And due to the concerns that you have heard, which I have heard as well, we discovered that weatherization falls under that. And that is the entire reason why we decided to have a weatherization portion and not just construction and heavy equipment, but rather add that weatherization piece in. Unfortunately, when money comes from the federal government and this grant is managed by V-Trans and then it comes down to us, we're still in a heavy paperwork phase, but I do think you will start seeing rollout of some of these training programs a little later in the next fiscal year. But again, that was absolutely in response to those concerns.
That's great. Do you have any relation with the apprenticeship programs in the unions, be that the electrical or plumbers or I guess the laborers union?
Yeah, so we're not that far yet. We're working on the RFQ to identify the groups that can help us advise on the training and help us execute the training. So, and I just met with V-Trans this morning to discuss the RFQ process, so I'm waiting on the state's approval, and then we start the outreach. But I might loop you in on that, though.
I'd love that.
Okay.
So yes, this is great. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks, Council Bergman. Other councilors' questions? Councilor Kane and then Councilor Bergman.
Just briefly, thank you. The zero interest loan program, we always started using ARPA funds, so
Correct.
so I'm just wondering how that program is.
So the ARPA, so it's a revolving loan fund, so with ARPA, the funds need to be dedicated by the end of 2024. So they have been dedicated. Then they need to be expended by 2026. And we're well on track. In fact, we need to slow down a little. We're well on track to have all the funds expended by the end of 2026. When the funds are repaid, they are repaid back into a general fund line. So it's that the funds have to be expended for these purposes. And then if we get a repayment, it doesn't go back into the ARPA pot, it goes back into the program itself.
Thank you. Just one other question. Do you interface with businesses like related to security issues that trespass? Okay.
Yes.
Wondering if maybe you could speak to yes, just how who is involved in those conversations. I guess I worry about siloing. I get a lot of questions, constituents from businesses, and I like to be well prepared to steer people in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I generally have been sort of the first call for a lot of the businesses just because I'm constantly emailing them about lots of things, so then they will connect with me. We are definitely feeling the impact of retail theft, especially on our locally owned businesses. I always say retail theft is not a victimless crime, that these people this is their family's income, and we're seeing a great increase in that. Where a lot of my concern goes is that there's an increased inability to staff their businesses because whether people feel threatened, whether it's the story that downtown isn't safe, whether downtown isn't safe, those all that can be debated, but the narrative is out there, and it's been problematic for businesses to be able to have staff that will work into the evening, after dark. You'll see that a lot of businesses have limited their business hours because they simply can't get, for example, in the winter, staff to work past 6 p.m. And that a lot of the street level behavior that they're seeing, they definitely feel is impacting their businesses as well. I also field a lot of calls around construction and how that may impact businesses. I do meet, as I said, with the Howard Street Outreach Team, and the police department and CSOs and CSLs on the regular. And I am having a town hall, virtual town hall with the mayor so that she can address some of their concerns and hear from that particular constituent base directly. Not all of the businesses will be able to be on that call, and I've already been in contact with them and trying to either get them some time with the mayor or some more time with me. I do spend a lot of time explaining to them some of the various steps we've taken to increase housing opportunities, to increase affordable housing, and how a lot of that all sort of is connected. In addition, personally, in my role, I feel a high level of frustration with the state of Vermont in terms of untreated mental health and substance use disorder that I think is not only a certain level of suffering for that population, but then is also an issue for our economy as well.
Thank you. So if BP, for instance, changes the staffing or hours of patrols in the area, would you be the person who is on between BPD and business community? Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thank you. So
Yeah, of course. Yeah, reach out anytime.
Thanks, Ms. Arcade.
You can ask a question for Councilor Carpenter, so I'm gonna go to Councilor Grant and then back to you. Maybe I'm. Who's on first? I can't remember anymore. Okay, Councilor Grant and then to Councilor Carpenter. Councilor Grant?
Thank you. I would actually be interested in getting reporting with regards to which businesses that you're working with. We periodically receive, different types of reports, but I don't get a lot of specifics. I have a curiosity, of course, about anything that's going on in the one. I do share Councilor Bergman's comments about what we can do to branch out to more businesses that are looking for labor. And maybe we can set up a meeting. I have some ideas. We have this huge workforce with UVM students who don't seem to take certain jobs anymore, in part because they don't have consistent transportation back up to the Hill or other parts of the city if they're working later at night. And also echoing some of the questions that Councilor Kane just mentioned. So that would be all I had. Thank you very much.
Yes, of course. I'm happy to connect on that, Councilor Grant.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor Carpenter?
Two comments. One, I wanted to piggyback on Councilor Bergman's comment about proposals in the future related to building emissions disclosure and performance standards. And I'm a real big advocate on the disclosure part, and I really will work on the whole thing. But I just throwing out there that's something I think early on we need good education about, and would I think help businesses in the long run. It's not so scary to figure out your energy use.
Yes.
And so that's a piece that I would think your department in particular could help businesses with. How do you figure out what is your energy use? And really with the goal in the long run that they could get rebates and things to help them. And
yes.
I'm a little concerned when folks understand this. The initiative has two parts. One will be disclosure, one will be requirements, but we can get on the boat early on the disclosure part. I think it will benefit.
Yeah, and we have had several meetings with Burlington Electric, like for example, around restaurants and their refrigeration and upgrading that and making that more energy efficient, and whether they can access funds through BED, through different grant programs. I will say we could probably have better coordination on that, so I agree, yeah.
The other comment, just I talked about trying to track businesses, and I just think that's great. A very knowledgeable person from my district said there are almost 600 registered businesses in the New North End. You go to Secretary of State's, some of them are consultant, but the degree that you got an energy or you got an intern floating around to do that, because that's really helpful information to have.
Yes, so we do have approximately 560 businesses in Burlington. That we know right now. I will say when businesses close, they can still be registered with the state of Vermont, and they can hold that at a fairly cheap price. So, and anyone who wants to be a consultant or is doing people's taxes from their home is also registered. So when I say business, I'm saying a retail customer facing brick and mortar establishment, But
we're just getting that data.
Yes, I think that is.
I understand how hard it is to get, working through record by record, but nonetheless, I think that's good.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Great, very happy to know that that business registry on Secretary of State's website is going to get better. So there's some recent investments and changes to what they need to be collecting. Women know, or you might pop over very good. Excellent. Look forward to that. I look forward to that. Any other questions from councilors? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. And save the best for last.
Oh, you took my line.
Action.
I thought that was gonna be our secret.
Well, now you're gonna have to come up with a dad joke or something.
No, well, okay, I'll back it up with this. Catherine, I knew you were gonna turn the heat up on the The budget presentations, I had no idea you meant it literally.
Don't come up to my office when I'm 86.
Well, Bill, there's a fan I turned off.
No, it's
Yeah, you can turn it back on.
fine.
All right. So once you're ready to go, want to start by introducing yourself?
Sure, I'm Bill Ford. I'm the director of the Permitting and Inspections Department. I just want to queue up the correct too many slide presentations going there. Sharing. Yeah. Up and start from the beginning. Okay, so yes, our department has a variety of different functions. I'll go over them relatively quickly. I can't promise that I will set a record, but I definitely leave plenty of time for questions. Just so that you understand what it is that we do, we have a variety of missions. Each of these is pretty in-depth, but the biggest thing that we do with rental housing is we do routine inspections on an ongoing basis of every rental unit. Typically, it's a 3-year cycle, but there's over 10,000 rental units in the city, so it's a different cycle depending on how quickly we can get through them. But in addition to those rental inspections, we also do complaint inspections. Those are on all the housing units, the rental units for Burlington. The health inspections that I've noted there are related to things that get referred to us through the Vermont Department of Health. My job, in addition to having a title as the director, I'm also Burlington's town health officer. And the housing inspectors that work for me are all deputy health officers. The third mission includes the issuance of zoning permits. That's essentially that project fits the design for that neighborhood that council has approved through the zoning ordinance, but it also is the land use for that particular property that's approved. Once our zoning staff reviews that, it either is reviewed administratively or goes through the development review board as necessary. The fourth area of mission, I would call it, is the trades permit review. The trades team formerly worked as part of the Department of Public Works, but they're part of my department for the last 3.5 years. They do the building permits, electrical permits, plumbing and mechanical permits. Each of those different divisions is somewhat supervised by and has appeals go to different boards. So I put them in there because occasionally councilors will ask, why don't you have a Department of Permitting Inspections board or commission? It's like, I have 4 of them. So the Housing Board review here's the issues related to rental housing. The health inspections are done in coordination with the citizen panel, the Burlington Board of Health. Zoning reviews or appeals are heard by the development review, and building trades, because it tends to be a very specific discipline, and they get the review is done of the appeals by the Public Works Commission. They get the assistance of having the city engineer sit in with them so that they can have their own independent person to help them review some of the technical pieces. So that was an important part of understanding how those things work. This is the organizational chart where on the left-hand side, as you look at that, you see the one person who's sort of the central person, like when you walk into the lobby, he's our main person that is sort of a greeter and helps most things. Either if you can't help them immediately, gives it to one of the other administrators or a staff member who can help them. That's our primary administrator, Alex. But then the other 3 larger columns are the division: trades division, zoning division, and the housing. The trades division and the administrator there on the left are supervised directly by me. The zoning division is supervised by Scott Gustin, and he's got 5 members within his team. And the vacant position, as of 2 weeks ago, you heard from former Councilor Busher in the opening remarks that Patty Wayman left us, took a job with South Burlington running their rental housing, their new rental registration program. But we'll be fine. We do have, as former Councilor Busher mentioned, I feel blessed. We have a great team. people tend to fill in when someone's not there naturally because we do a lot of cross-pollination. People know other people's jobs enough to be able to help. And that's very true with the, we have a vacant inspector position towards the bottom of that because that person went into the last opening that occurred in the zoning division. The zoning division, we lost just a few months ago a person who has reached retirement age and left to take a job with Green Mountain Transit Authority. Ted Miles was a great employee. Anyone watching who doesn't know that he left, it's a big loss for the city, but the person who was within the department sort of was up and ready to take over and is doing a great job already. We've got to replace that vacant inspector position. We do need to replace the housing manager position, but that last one on the bottom of the housing column is one I'll come back to. That's a vacant administrator position. The big changes in the 2025 budget, before I get to those, I guess I'll mention, I think it's critical to just remember for everybody, because of the work that we do and the amount of things happening in Burlington, we ultimately produce a lot of revenue and our expenses are below that. We don't pay directly to Chapin for the use of the space, but if we were paying for the building down there, or if we were paying independently, we don't pay personally to Kim's services, but she does great service at the city attorney's office. Essentially, that overage goes back to the general fund. You probably heard this a lot from a lot of the other departments, but personnel expenses are a big change this year. You've heard it repeatedly, but cost of living and employee benefits were a big change. The savings we'll make this year is that last person on the right-hand side that I mentioned, the vacant administrator position on the housing side. Because of that cross-pollination that I mentioned, the 3 administrator positions, even though they were designed to be in different divisions, all have nearly identical job descriptions. They are basically required to have knowledge of all the different areas, but because of the design of the department, we asked them, or I asked them to be an expert in one of those 3 to help keep that team moving. So without that person, with the efficiencies that we've found through OpenGov, I think we'll be able to do our part in helping with the budget by keeping that position as a vacant position. The third column down there, it's probably only about a $10,000 increase, but rental registration revenue will increase this year because of new units that will be coming online. It's only about just under 100 units, but there may be more. I try to be conservative in those. I would expect it would be more, but it's not a huge number, but it's worth noting that we're going up. And the last one is even smaller. It's a change because the certificate of occupancy fees for zoning permits. We changed the design a few years ago so that those fees, you used to get a permit for zoning, and then when you were done, you had to pay another fee to close the permit. It was really foolish and it added extra steps. You heard Mary Danko talk about a lien process. When we did our lien process, we shifted that so that you pay up front and then we trigger the inspection when the project gets closed on the building side. The big priorities for us for the upcoming year, increasing the rental inspection pace because we are shorthanded now. We need to make up for that as the new staff come on board. Additional short-term rental enforcement will be happening this year. I have a proposal that I've yet to give to the mayor, but I think we have time because the potential proposal wouldn't actually come in for an increase in fees for those until April 1st of next year, but we could get a benefit from increasing our enforcement platform with Granicus. Host compliance helps us with short-term rental registration information, but they're not an enforcement arm. They have another level of platform where if you pay an additional fee to them, they can do additional enforcement from an administrative perspective. They can't do what Kim can do, but they can lay out a very good case that it's become harder for us with our reduced staff to watch them. They change so frequently, sometimes daily, the numbers and who's doing what. Someone needs to be watching it nearly constantly to keep track to make sure. That's one proposal I think would be a simple thing for us to do to increase the fee on those by sometime this summer or fall so that we can have another package, so to speak, with Granicus and have better enforcement through their actions. their assistance. Problem properties, the administration is aware of this. I talked about it in my presentation to the mayor's team, that there are ordinances I've reviewed from other communities that have a tiered effect. Effectively, the way it does, a number of communities have started doing vacant building fees on an increasing basis. So essentially, the longer the property remains vacant, the higher your fee goes, up to a point that different communities have different caps. But it's something I learned about back in October, and I think that's, the time is right for that. It won't make a huge difference in the amount of vacant building fees we collect, but I do think it could make people or encourage people to turn their properties around faster. And the weatherization ordinance, you've heard a lot about that. There's going to be an upcoming session or more with the committee, and I think we're going to have some creative ways coming out of that. We're already working with Burlington Electric Department. In addition to what you've heard tonight, workforce development, we're working with Burlington Electric on ways to help the people who are renting look at property in addition to whether it's in compliance for rental housing, but also for weatherization. Essentially, the proposal right now is something similar to like if you bought a refrigerator, you're shopping, you look at Whirlpool, Hot Point, and Kenmore or Frigidaire, and you can see from the Energy Star rating which one has the best energy rating. Something similar to that, we hope, will be a benefit for, if we put it on our certificate of compliance, will be a benefit for tenants who are searching for places to not only find a good place, but find one that's going to be more energy efficient. So we've got an outside grant-based team that's working with us with Burlington Electric to make sure that it's tenant-based. Something Bill Ward might do might be wonky, so this is good. They're focused on an equitable way for all Burlington community members to be able to look at something and have it simply, for them, mean more than what we might be able to find within our data. And then the last piece is implementing fee increases. We've heard a lot about different things. The outcome from the fee study from my department was essentially that most things are meeting the cost recovery model. There's a few things that are going to amount to about $26,000 worth of additional revenue for the upcoming year. It includes a small change with building permits and a little bit bigger change for electrical permits because we have 2 electrical inspectors. Costs a little bit more to have that, and we're not capturing all of the funds to pay for that fully. So increasing that fee makes good sense. And I don't know how I did for time, but happy to stay as long as you need for questions.
Good job. Thank you. Questions for Bill Ward?
I got a bunch of different ones. I'll start with the thing you just said because I can remember it. You're talking about the working with the rental properties and Energy Star rating. And would that be all rental properties?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Long year. And you know, I think part of what we're going to talk later too, I think making that information publicly available will be helpful. I still continue to hear people say to me, doing construction in Burlington is hard. I'm looking for bathroom renovation, personal. 2 contractors have told me this small, they don't want to do business with Burlington. I don't want to go wide. I really encourage the mayor and you to put together a group, advisory group, a task force, whatever you want to call it, to really drill down on that. Because I just hear so often that there's some truth to it. And people can pick and choose because of labor force, so maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's not us, but I just encourage us to put together a group to understand why are contractors saying it. Maybe it's not true, but we ought to know it. I think part of it would be looking at things like, can we do more delegated certifications? You know, if a master electrician put in my electricity, do I really have to wait 2 weeks for the city's electrician to come certified? So I just, as an initiative, I think it's worthy of some effort. And these are more editorial comments and maybe more addressed to the man. Again, I made the overall comment that I'm not sure plugging our hole with just vacancies is the best strategy. So I am concerned about the vacancies in your department, because I think it's a difficult department. It's not one people leave, nobody wants to do code enforcement, but it's a high priority. So I think as twofold, I think I encourage you to speak up, because I don't want to leave vacant just because they're vacant, and encourage the mayor to look at the budget. Maybe that means a cut somewhere else, because I just think we still have significant code problems in the city. I totally recognize how hard they are to get on top of.
Councilor Carpenter, Councilor Bergman, and then Councilor Grant.
Okay, hi, Bill, how are you?
Very good. Good evening.
Good. In looking through the budget itself, I see no lines for fines for vacant building fees or on the expense side for relocation expenses. I don't understand that. And I know from long experience that there is non-compliance, so I cannot believe that we are not issuing any tickets. So could you please enlighten us in terms of why I don't find anything there? Maybe I missed it, but be loved to find out.
The sheet that you have, I believe it's listed as 4535 is the fund number, miscellaneous revenue. It doesn't specifically say vacant building fees, but we don't have a revenue line for any fines, because the fines have generally always gone to the police department, who's administered tickets. So they still go back into the general fund, but they don't show up as something that's revenue for us.
Well, I would request that the CIO correct that, because that just leads to us not being clear about what who's generating the fines and the work, since your department is the one that is doing the lion's share. All they're doing is sending them in under their name. So okay, so in terms of the miscellaneous revenue for vacant building fees, is all of that vacant building fees, or is that I see like $11,000 last year or something like that?
Yes, so some of that is lien amounts. The amount that's not there so far would be lien amounts or amounts that are overdue in our OpenGov database, but the projected amount for the upcoming year is 16,000, and that's not including any changes that I had mentioned, which I think the whole point with vacant buildings is that we always need to remember we might increase that fee, but if it ultimately means people have greater compliance, it might not necessarily increase the number. I like it. I'd much rather have compliance, but I don't want to predict that it would doubling the fees after a 6 to 12 month period would necessarily double the revenue, because if it forces people to comply, I love that, but if that happens, we're not going to see the actual revenue.
Can I just ask a question? Is there some amount of lien dollars that are just not showing up? I mean, that dollar amount is what you've gotten
Correct.
Cash, but there's some amount tacked onto the building that either they'll sell it and pay you, probably that's more like, do you have any sense about how much that is?
I don't have that. Patty was handling it. I'm about to be more directly involved, but I do think there are some that are overdue, but we'll have a higher amount ultimately at the end of the fiscal year than what's currently there. Sure.
I'd love to have more detail on the number of tickets that have been issued and the fines that have been collected, as well as the numbers of vacant buildings and some granularity on that. And what about relocation fee expenses? I didn't see a line on that in the expenses. I might have missed it.
It is we did increase it after some of the issues we've had.
Good.
If you go down to the third page of the same document, I believe you have the same document I'm looking at. I think on the left-hand column, it would be line 90, 6500_139.
Okay. Relocation clearing.
Yes.
Okay. And you're showing, was it this year that 18,500 is, was that, was budgeted?
That included some of the issues for a fire and some relocation for property on St. Paul Street.
Yep.
And some of that included for Winning to Fourth Church Street relocation.
Are those actual expenses that have been incurred, or that was just the budgeted amount?
No, those are expenses that have been incurred.
Okay, and you're projecting $10,000. I'm critical of the city's reaction to those dislocations. So I just want to lay that out. I think that we need to do a much better job with regard to making sure that people get out quickly of unsafe housing. So and just vacant and just a better job of enforcement. I'm sorry to say.
Point out, if I could, that in previous years, the number was stagnant at $2,000. So we tried to increase that to match reasonable expectations. But as you know, if property owners do their part, that number shouldn't be used because we ultimately need those. We'll get that back, but we do need to have the money available when people need it. So that's why we're projecting 10,000 for the upcoming year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergen. Councilor Grant?
I will eventually, but
I'm gonna Councilor Grant and then. Okay, Councilor Grant?
Thank you. I strongly agree with some of the comments that Councilor Bergman mentioned. I would really like to see some type of reporting on the vacant buildings that we have and what their status is regarding fines. I know that we have some buildings in the Old North End that have been vacant for some time, and I would love to know, like, you know, where they're at. I really, I'm very curious about that. And I'm wondering if we are losing funds because we may not be catching everything that's vacant. Some just quick numbers. You mentioned there are approximately 10,000 rental units in the city. How many are inspected per month on average?
That we just like do my calculator real quick because so about 275 units each month to 300 on average.
On average. Okay. And then regarding short-term rental enforcement, now, is there still litigation fighting Yes. Okay. Would love to have an update sent to council as to the current stat, you know, any updates around the litigation, just so we know what's going on. So until that litigation is resolved, how does that affect enforcement and possibly getting fines related to that?
We are represented by Kim Sturdivant, and she can include that in the update to the city council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant, and we'll work with President Travers to coordinate that. Because I know another councilor, Councilor Shannon, has asked me that, and so I'm also curious. So great. I think Q is Councilor Key, and then Councilor Roderick.
but sure, So yeah, I'd also like the vacancy data. And I would like to just learn a little bit more about the inspections that you do of rental units. So is that related in any way to the weatherization process?
Slightly different in that they're not on the same track. The weatherization is specific to the energy usage, and the inspections are based on a certificate of compliance expiration. So when a property is inspected, if it was in poor condition and then comes into compliance, it typically gets a 1-year certificate and go back more frequently. If it was in great condition and didn't have any violations to be corrected, it gets a 5-year certificate. So essentially, we're inspecting the worst places more frequently to make sure that they stay in good shape. The weatherization, we're only going after the properties that have the highest energy use. So the highest PTU is the per square units for the per square foot of living space.
Are you getting that data from?
It's a combination of Burlington Electric and Vermont Gas.
Thanks. And then as part of the inspections, are you looking at leases?
At leases?
Yeah. Okay. I'm just wondering, like, I'm interested in like a rent stabilization ordinance, and I'm wondering if that could be like folded into the already existing inspections processes. Like how much of an extra lift that would be to like involve your department in enforcement if we had rent stabilization.
It would probably be all about the design of the system, because anything that's designed, that can be done with less complicated nature, the easier it would be to actually enforce. So it really would come down to the design of that. But weatherization is a good example. You've got 3 independent departments, and we're not always in communication with each other. And Vermont Gas is not within our span of control, and they're great partners. It just means it adds a complicated piece to it, and that we have a mix of people who are really trying to comply, and my sense is there's some others that are trying to hide.
But you don't collect rent information, do you?
No, we don't.
So that's a
Thank you. And just one last quick question. I get some complaints from constituents about their landlords. So what should I be telling them? Like, should they be submitting a formal complaint with the Housing Board of Review? Is that
it really depends on the nature of it, because I think the best thing is to call our office, and if there's a lack of clarity, they can ask for me personally. Because sometimes it is more of a legal question, and we can turn that over to, we have a contract that's part of our budgeted line for contractual services. We have an ongoing contract with CDOEL, the Vermont Tenants Association. They give legal guidance to tenants and make referrals to us when they are related to housing conditions, and legal aid in other cases to provide legal assistance if there's something unrelated to the actual housing conditions. Sure.
Councilor Kane, just before I go to Councilor Broderick, I just want to note that, bring legislative things in, but when I had a constituent who was interested in another related issue on the renter rebate program on the state level, there have been changes for the last couple of years. Very long story short, we actually put a bill in that was looking at trying to make sure that on one of the tax forms that landlords are required to file, that they actually put the rent information on there. It would be an easy fix within the Department of Tax and the look for the small city of Burlington.
They agree?
Well, the bill got some interest in Ways and Means. It didn't get all the way through, and shout out to all the future legislators for the next cycle to perhaps bring that bill up. But I'm happy to share that bill with you, and maybe work with the Burlington delegation to try to get that in. The larger premise of the bill, though, just to be clear, was around some of the changes we've done in income eligibility. Had reduced some of that middle group of folks who used to be qualifying for rental rebate lost the eligibility because we tried to move more money to the lower income folks. Not to get into it tonight, but I'm happy to tell you the bill, and I think that would be actually a big win for the whole state of Vermont and maybe less for Burlington to try to figure out rents on their own. Anyway, thanks for the commercial PSA for state legislature. Okay, Councilor Broderick.
So first of all, Bill, thank you and I'm also interested in the status of our unoccupied vacant structures. Whatever you send to Councilor Bergman, I'd also like to see that information. And building off of that, I'm just wondering, in addition to vacant unoccupied structures, are we also tracking vacant dwellings within occupied structures, vacant apartments, for example?
No. If the building itself is occupied by someone, the building is considered occupied for our purposes. So we typically don't know if there's a vacant unit within a duplex, or, we've got units that are buildings that have 100+ units. I'd be shocked if they ever are always at 100%. So that would be a challenging thing for us, but it's not something we have on an ongoing basis. The electric department would seem like they would have more accurate data as far as, electric usage within a multiple unit building to see how many of those are currently active at any given time.
Great, thank you. And just going back to general operations, besides just workforce, whether it's the workforce training or just filling your vacant positions, what, in terms of process, what has your department thought of, and what's been cooking in terms of making the process of doing our inspections in terms of the short-term rental ordinance, which is in flux right now, obviously, and the rental weatherization, all that, to make those processes help us better follow through on them from a process standpoint as opposed to staff, if that made sense.
Yeah, I think they're each a little bit different, but what I had mentioned, for example, with short-term rentals, the best way I think is I had initially thought that our staff knows Burlington better and would be better suited to track down some of these properties if it's an unknown property. But the Granicus data has their own sort of methodology for identifying those properties. We've struggled because some of the property owners don't include enough information to actually identify a unit. If they put a picture of the front of City Hall, you can easily recognize that building, but some of them, I don't want to draw any conclusions about why. It might be for their own security. They don't want, depending on who it is, they may not want to identify the front of their building and indicate that maybe they're living there as a single person and this is a rental within their unit. It could be a security reason. It could be for some other reason, but some, which are harder to identify, only have interior pictures of their units online, and with a nickname, and not an actual. If it said Bill Ward and it listed a 645 Pine Street, that's easy if the rental shows that address. But some of them, the company itself can't identify them. But there are other ways for them to communicate through the vendor, whether it's VRBO or Airbnb or one of the others, to provide information to at least send a neutral notification to say, we didn't see your rental registration number as it's required under the ordinance with your property. And if you include that, then you're in part in compliance with the ordinance. We've identified some of them. The one I just used as an example, it took a lot of work because it's almost like a police investigation where you have to do detective work to really find some small clues within the photographs to figure out where it might be within a geographical area and sort of zoom in on it. But if the person's name is Bill and they are in a certain geographical area, it's really hard to say specifically which one that is. But the point I was getting to is the vendor does have a different platform level. If we paid a little bit more, I'm not suggesting we pay, I'm saying the registrants pay. We increased it by $30 for the upcoming year. We could have that next level platform paid for and have them doing that extra enforcement work that is really time consuming. And in some cases, it's been impossible for us to specifically identify some of these places. That I think would go a long way to help relieving our burden and make it a little bit more productive. So that's one example. I'm sorry, what was the other area you were interested on process?
I guess just general code enforcement. Like I remember when we talked about how there's been issues where tenants don't report derelict properties until they're already moved out. What is the department doing to educate tenants on reporting early, reporting when the problem starts, when they're experiencing it?
Yeah, most of that work we have to do with our partners, both at Vermont Apartment Owners Association and Vermont, the CBOEO, the Vermont Tenants, because the challenge with that is what I hear after the fact from some tenants is that they actually have a really cheap unit and they know that there are some issues, but they don't want to risk that by having it, if they say something to us, have their rents go up. Like, that's hard. If we don't know that, then we can't help them in any way. But sometimes we find out only after the fact when they say, yeah, you should probably check this place out. That's hard for us because we can help the person that's there after them, but someone may have gone an entire year with a place that was ultimately substandard. It's a challenge, and I'm not sure what the best way to tackle that besides continuing to work with our partners to encourage people to make sure that they come forward, even if it's without identifying a specific unit, to at least get some baseline information about what's acceptable, because these are smart people. They just are feeling like they don't want to cross the property owner, and they know they're paying below market rate for the unit. They're not going to be able to afford it if it goes up to market rate. It's a unique challenge, and that's part of where the weatherization is going to be a challenge too, because I'm afraid that even with a good Energy Star rating system where they can pick between the places, when you have a near zero vacancy rate, people don't care. It's really a challenge for us. They want any unit that's available. They don't care. That's really a tough place. So more housing is a great benefit for us and for the prospective tenants.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Also,
No, that's all. Thank you.
great. It is 9:09, colleagues. This was a really marvelous night of the day. Are there any final questions before we wrap up for tonight?
This is an editorial comment, I think, and I actually had an offline conversation with Joe Turner about, there's a lot of good housing data out there. VHFA has it, and I think there could be some more collaboration for the city to see what data we could get from them that they already do. And so I'm just tossing that out. We can talk about that.
Great. Okay. All right, seeing no further questions and no further business on our agenda, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 9:10 p.m. Again, thank you for the marvelous time, and see you next week for the final one on May 29th.